Because of the affinity and the impact you had made in so many people's lives, including myself, I wanted to come and tell your story to the world.
What changed my life was finding that part that's inside of all of us that will not give up.
Everybody now knows you're not a regular guy. There's something deep down inside that you tapped into.
I had huge drive because I just wanted to be more. I didn't want to settle. I looked at our family and all the pain that I saw my mother go through and we would go through, and I was like, I'm not gonna have a future like that. I'm gonna find some way to do more.
You're not one of the best. You're the best in your space.
I'm here to help the people that are interested. I'm not here to say I'm the right thing for everybody. I'm not some celebrity telling you what to do. I'm here for you to do what's right.
I feel fire, competitiveness, like in a big way. It's very obvious. The ambition, the fire is felt.
If you're real and raw and you truly serve, popularity doesn't matter. You'll get through to people.
I appreciate the great work you've done in your dedication to people for making other people's lives better. The one and only Tony Robbins is in the house. So it's not every day the guest flies in a helicopter to do a podcast, but that's exactly what happened here today with Tony Robbins. And by the way, the things we talked about was very, very interesting. I shared a story that most people don't know about. I opened it up with my story and my affinity, my connection with him from 21 years old. We talked about his relationship with Diddy because at one point he was working with Diddy and helping him out with certain things he was going through. We talked about how he one time was working with Kanye and Kardashians. We talked about money, the secret to private equity, and how all of a sudden his interest in equity, private equity, and some of the stuff that he'll share with you financially that you yourself are going to be like, that's pretty interesting. I can use that for myself. We talked about NLP, how a mentor of his would teach NLP that the audience would be people from sales, from former CIA and existing CIA people showing up to the conference. That was fantastic to talk about. And for a guy that's about human psychology, human performance, I asked him about Luigi Mangione, who killed the CEO of United Healthcare. And I said, what is the profile of somebody who does this? What makes somebody to get to this point, and what can we do to prevent this from happening with other people? His answer was very, very unique. And then as a businessman, we talked about the one time that he had a business dealing with somebody that indirectly he lost $125 million. And I said, so the great Tony Robbins, you are the person that body language expert, all these other things that you do. How does somebody take advantage of you? And he says, well, right after that, he tells the entire story on what it was. It had to do something with Amway and some of these other things. You have to hear the story. And then he said something to me that he does now whenever they do business with other people, that if you're somebody that's a business person, you're going to want to hear what he has to say with his strategy. I was blown away. You'll see my reaction when he tells me. I shared a story about the time there was a background check done on me and what the investors found on me. But anyways, I have a feeling you're going to love this conversation. With that being said, here's an interview with the one and only, the GOAT of his space, Tony Robbins.
30 seconds.
Did you ever think you would make it? I feel I'm so close I could taste sweet victory. I know this life meant for me.
Adam, what's your point? The future looks bright.
My handshake is better than anything I ever signed. It's right here.
You are a one-of-one?
My son's right.
I don't think I've ever said this before.
Okay, so this is a special podcast for me. Let me tell you why. Some of you who may not know him from a space that I know him from, but you may know him from, he was an actor. He was in the movie Shallow Hal. He changed a lot of people's lives, and I got a guy out there that may need a little bit of him, but he was in a bunch of different things. And then for me, my story, at 21 years old, when I got out of the Army, I'm trying to figure myself out. Nothing's going right for me. I'm in LA. I get a call saying, hey, there's an event going on in Long Beach Convention Center. I get in a car. I head down to a Long Beach Convention Center by myself. Typically, when you go to an event, you go with somebody. I go by myself, and I sit there, and I watch this guy for 4 days. I was enamored by his energy, his intensity, his level of stamina, endurance, just inspiring everybody. He has indirectly and directly impacted tens, if not hundreds of millions of people's lives worldwide, including this one when I was coming up, and God knows I needed it at that time. And so we've been in talks for a while, but we're finally doing this. The one and only, we can say the GOAT of this space, Anthony Robbins, Tony Robbins, is in the house. It's great to have you here.
Patrick, nice to have you.
Of course.
Thanks, buddy.
And you know,
nice to be in your new digs here too.
Yes, yeah, I can't wait to show you the whole thing. But you know, the story I wanted to tell you, we got a lot of things I want to talk. I got a bunch of questions I want to ask you about you and you know what you've done, your story, future. And I know you got this program you're working on, which everybody has to learn about. And we'll talk about that later on as well. Time to Rise, you're the founder of it. We'll get into that. We'll put the link to that as well. So stick around for that. But I'll tell you a funny story. I'm 23 years old. If you open up my sales presentation folder, okay, the first picture is your picture. You had that yellow tie picture. I don't know which. You had your three-piece suit on. You had a yellow tie on.
Gold tie, yes.
Gold tie, yes.
Remember.
And I remember that. I'm like, dude, this guy. And I'm listening to Personal Power 2 over and over. And, the cassette tapes.
Yes.
Then I go to I'm running an insurance company. I'm trying to be a broker at this time, but I'm not fully 100% in the insurance. I don't know if I'm going to do it or not. So I go to this, job fair, trying to find other people to sell insurance. But Anthony Robbins' company was there.
Oh, wow.
And this lady was working there. Her name is Cynthia Bradley. I remember her name vividly. So I start talking to her. I say, hey, listen, I love Tony. His work's changed my life. All this stuff's great. Da-da-da-da-da. He said, why don't you come and work for us? I said, but I'm doing insurance. And no, you should come and interview for us. It'd be great. You would do very good with us and all that. I'm like, dude, I came to recruit people. You can't turn this on me, right? It's got to be the other way around. Anyways, long story short, I get an interview set up. She sets me up with a guy named Bert, something like that, whoever he was in San Diego. And I'm about to go there, but my business is starting to create some momentum.
Yes.
And then last minute, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be tough. I don't know if I'm making the right choice or not. I said, listen, I'm going to do this insurance thing, and we'll see what happens. But because of the affinity and the impact you had made in so many people's life, including myself, I wanted to come and tell your story to the world because I believed in your product so much.
Wow.
I've never told this story before.
Wow.
I wanted you to hear from me.
That's very kind. That's wonderful. I'm so glad it touched you so much. Well, it looks like you made the right choice on the insurance because you did quite well selling your business. That's awesome.
Well, a lot of the methods is being inspired from guys like, you were the guy that was on repeat, regularly listened to it. And, we watch you and you're there. And then sometimes, of course, the impact you're making. At this point of the game, you've known for decades who you are, the gifts God's given you. But it's generational. Kids are impacted by it. A lot of people are impacted by it. So I've been looking forward to this. So let's get into it. So I want to go into a couple different things. All right, sure. I got upbringing that, I know your story, but I think I got a couple questions that maybe it will be a different angle. The evolution of the space you're in, self-help, inspirational, motivational, whatever people want to call it. Human psychology, health topics, NLP, and then some current events when we get the chance at the end as well. We'll get into that as well. And I got a surprise gift for you. I think you're going to like at the end.
Okay.
And you'll see how surprised it is when I tell you about it. All right. So, Tony, for you with where you are right now, I go back and I read the story. You put on 38 pounds. Your friend comes in, Venice Beach. Hey, what are you doing with your life? Get up, do something. You're the guy changing your life. All this other stuff. But even prior to that, right? 7 years old, parents got a divorce. My parents got a divorce, right? A lot of chaos in the family, a lot of challenges in the family. Mom, dad, married, remarried, divorced, my parents. And I'm listening to your story. How much you think like a chaotic upbringing is necessary for someone to be able to make it at the highest level, to be able to tolerate the pain? Because if you can handle it as a young kid, it's going to help you out later on in life.
Well, when I look at people's lives and I say, what makes people successful? I love, wickedly smart people. I love intelligence. But you and I both know there are a lot of very smart people that can't fight their way out of a paper bag,
that is
right?
True.
What I found is, in my own experience, is the number one ingredient is hunger. If somebody's got a hunger that doesn't go away, not a hunger to lose some weight for the summer, I'm talking about hunger to be more, to do more, to create more, to become something, to give something that matters. That kind of hunger that doesn't go away. That's what you see in I'm sure you know Richard Branson. He's a good friend, Richard is 74 years old and he has the same hunger as he did when he was 16 starting Virgin in a crypt. You know what I mean? That's there. Anybody who has that component that's alive in them is going to succeed. And hunger, though, usually comes from not having things go so well. I mean, I come from an environment where I had 4 different fathers, and the common denominator I thought at that stage was lack of money because we had no money for food. But, someone was interviewing me the other day. I just announced, I started out early on when I was 11 years old. I had people come to my house on Thanksgiving. We had no money and no food. We had crackers and peanut butter. That's what we would have had. But, Thanksgiving, everybody's having a big feast, so it really makes it pretty daunting. And my parents were saying things to each other that you can never take back. And I have a younger brother, 5 years younger sister, 7 years younger, and I'm trying to make sure they don't hear this. And this knock comes to the door, and I open the door, and there's this tall guy holding 2 giant bags of groceries. And then on the floor, on the ground, he had this uncooked frozen turkey in a pan that he'd obviously carried up there first. And he said, "Is your father home?" And I'm like, "Just one moment," right? And so I run to get my dad. They're screaming at each other. I said, "The door's for you." He goes, "You answer it." I said, "I answered. He has to speak to you." "Who is it?" "I don't know." And I'm just as a little boy, right, 11 years old, just like waiting to see his face, thinking it's going to be the happiest moment in our lives. And my dad opened the door, and he was not a happy man. He said, "We don't take charity." And he just went to slam the door in the guy's face. And the guy had, leaned in slightly, so it hit his shoulder and bounced off. And that made my dad even more frustrated. And he said, Sir, I said, "I'm just the delivery guy. Everybody has tough times, and somebody knows you're having tough times, and they want you to have a great Thanksgiving with your family." And my father said, "We don't take charity," and went to do it again. And this time the guy, because he leaned in, his foot now got there, and his foot hit the door, and it bounced open. And my dad's getting madder. And then the guy saw my father and saw me. And he said something. I thought my father was going to punch him in the face. He said, "Sir," he said, "don't make your family suffer because of your ego." And I could still see the veins on the side of my father's face, neck. I thought for sure he was going to punch him. And he took the food, didn't say anything, threw it on the table, and slammed the door, and never said thank you. And I tell you that story because it changed my life. Because I believe I didn't know it then. I figured it out later because I had to. My father left our family about 2 weeks after that. And to me, he had 4 fathers, but he's the one who adopted me. He's the one whose name I carry. He's the one I love the most, quite frankly, I had the most time with. It's the most inspirational for me. But he left. And why did he leave? Because there's 3 decisions we make every moment of our lives. The first decision we're making is, what are we going to focus on? Right now, there's millions of things we could focus on. People listening could be focused on what they're doing, what we're saying, whether it matters or not, a million things, right? But we only focus on a small band of things. And whatever we focus on, we experience in life. And so the first decision, what to focus on, I know what he focused on. He focused on that he had not fed his family because he kept saying it. But then the second decision you make as soon as you focus on something is you give it a meaning. Is this the end or the beginning? If you think it's the end of a relationship, you're going to behave very different than the beginning. Is this person dissing me? Are they challenging me? Are they coaching me? Or are they actually loving me? Whatever meaning you create produces emotion, and those emotions control your third decision, which is, what are you going to do? And I tell you that because he focused on, didn't feed his family. The worst part was the meaning. The meaning for him was, I'm worthless, and he decided to leave our family. That day, I had a very different experience. I focused on there was food, what a concept. But then secondly, the meaning is what changed my life. It's why I'm sitting here right now. The meaning I got was, wow, strangers care. My father always said, we grew up in an environment on the other side of the tracks, quite literally. And, I thought it was a wealthy community. It was a lower middle class community, but compared to us, they were wealthy. And my dad would always say, no one cares. And it's like, I had evidence that someone cared so much and they didn't even want credit. They fed my family. And so it's like, if strangers care about me and my family, I'm going to care about strangers. And I made a decision right then at 11 years old, I'm going to feed people when I get older. And so when I was 17, I fed 2 families, and it was so emotionally rewarding. Then I went to 4 and 8, then I got to 1 million. Then I got to 4 million, 2 million from my foundation, 2 million from me. And then in the last 10 years, about 8 years or 10 years ago I started, it took me 8 years, I said, I'm going to provide 1 billion meals here in the United States. And we did that in 8 years, I'm proud to be, 100 million meals a year. I did it through Feeding America as my partner. And all that came, to answer your question, because of the turmoil, as you described it. In other words, I said to someone the other day, I don't know, we're not only fed 1 billion, but now, because of the war in Ukraine, most people are unaware of it. The news doesn't even talk about it. But that's the breadbasket for most of Africa. So there are 11 nations that are on the realm or on the edge of famine. And then, we need, obviously, fertilizer. 50% of the world's food comes from fertilizer. The WWF doesn't want people to use it, but we need it. And because of the war, most of it comes from Russia, so the price has gone through the roof. So normally there's 80 million people a year that are on the verge of starvation. This year it's 350 million. And so I decided, I met with the head of the food program for the UN. It was, a gentleman here that was unbelievable. And what he'd done, he won the Nobel Prize 2 years ago for feeding people. So he and I joined together and created 100 billion meals. I said, how many do we need to bridge the gap? He said about 70 billion. I said, let's do 100 billion meals in 10 years. I did 1 billion. I wasn't a billionaire when I started. I said, so I've grown, obviously, to make that happen. But all we need is 99 people like me, and we can do this, right? And so we went out to do it, and we announced a few days ago, we hit 30 billion meals already in the first 2 years. Most people thought it would be totally impossible. So we're going to make that happen. But here's what I wanted you to get. If I was a well-fed child, do you think I'd be working this hard? I know, I'm proud to be a good human being. I believe I'm a good human being, but I don't think I would have that same drive. So I think hunger often comes, not always, often comes from having gone through enough pain. Like, I've suffered enough. I don't want somebody else to suffer.
So what do you say to the kid that right now is Tony, okay? They have access to YouTube. They're watching this, right? And they're going through it. Because for us, now, I'm 46. You've been around. You've done your part. We are now out of it. When you were in it, how were you coping with that pain? For me, it was sports. It was bodybuilding. What was your coping mechanism at that time? We didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah, sports was a big piece, but for me, it was books. I decided to take a speed reading course when I was 15 years old, and I was going to read a book a day, and I didn't do that. But I read 700 books in 7 years, all in the area of human development, psychology, physiology.
Pre-18.
Pre-18. Well, over 7 years, so starting at that time.
Got it.
And what it was I just got obsessed with wanting to know answers, because early on, for example, I was really small in high school and junior high school. I was 5'1" my sophomore year in high school. I'm 6'7" now. I tell people the difference is personal growth.
10 inches in a year, right?
But I had a tumor and didn't know it, a pituitary tumor. It made me explode in size. And when people talk about growth pains, I mean, your muscles are stretching, it's brutal. But the point is, as I went through that process, I found myself in a place where books where I could go to another world. I could read Emerson's essays and I could feel that sense of autonomy and freedom. I could read Man's Search for Meaning and say, no matter what you went through, this guy went through, Auschwitz and survived and turned things around. How can I make my life work? And so, especially biographies, because when you read a biography, not an autobiography, but a biography written by the actual author, you're thinking their thoughts. And whatever thoughts you think over and over again develop habits and emotions and meaning in your life, right? So that became my way. Between that and sports is how I really managed it. But I also, early on, when I was 17, I went and heard this man named Jim Rohn, a personal development speaker. I think you probably have heard of.
Incredible.
And he was really amazing. He used to do this 3.5-hour seminar on how to, he turned his life around, became successful in various ways. And I was working for this gentleman. I was in high school, and I was, got my little growth spurt. And so the guy's like, he was successful flipping houses. And my family said, he used to be such a loser, my father said. Now he's so successful. And so one day he called and said, listen, your son looked to make some extra money. And I was always doing that. We were poor. I had to help support the family. So I had 2 jobs working as a janitor. I was like, yeah, I'll work on the weekend there. Let's do it. So I'm moving all the stuff, but I had a goal. I really want to know how he became so successful. Because my idea of success then is when you're poor is like you've done well in achievement. You've done well in economics, finance. And so one day he took me to lunch. He goes, you're such a hard worker. I'm taking you to lunch. And so he asked me a bunch of questions. I said, I want to ask you some questions. And he said, what do you want to know? I said, well, my father said you used to be such a loser and now you're so successful. I wasn't trying to be negative. As a kid, you don't think, right? And he started laughing. He goes, your father said, what? I said, well, he goes, well, it's true. I said, well, what changed you? He said, I went to a seminar. I said, what's a seminar? He said, this man comes and he takes 20, 30 years of his life and he crunches that down to like 3.5 hours and shows you the shortcuts to make your life as successful as it could be. I said, well, I'd like to go to that. He said, I think you should. I said, well, how much is it? And he said, $35, to be like $250 today.
This is still Jim Rohn.
This is Jim Rohn, but this is the guy that had gone and attended, right? And he goes, so it'll be like $250 in today's dollars. But for me, I'm making $40 a week as a janitor, so it's a week's worth of pay. And I said, well, can you get me in? He said, sure. I said, well, will you? And he said, no. I said, why not? He goes, you won't value it if you don't pay for it. And I go, look, man, I'm making $40 a week. That's a week's pay. He goes, okay, well, figure it out on your own. Take 10 or 20 years and figure it out on your own if you want to do that, or learn faster through this and make the investment in yourself. So it was like, to me, the biggest decision of my life at that point, it felt like, because it's like a week's pay. I mean, and I went to that seminar and I took notes like a crazy person. And I was finishing some of Jim Rohn's statements because I read all these books. So it's like, I recognized them. I was like this wild person in the middle of the event. And afterwards, I went up and I thought, I'm gonna change the world. I'm 17 years old. I'm gonna run for president. First, I'll run for Senate. Before that, I'll do Congress. Before that, I'll do
so
local
you had
state
political
assembly.
aspirations at the time.
I thought that how I'd serve most. And then I'll start by my high school. I'll run for my student body president of my high school. And I was not the most popular kid in school at all. And I did it in a real campaign. I went and talked to all the groups and found out what they wanted and told them the truth, what could be done and what I thought couldn't be done. And I won. I beat the most popular kid in school. And so that taught me that if you're real and raw and you truly serve, popularity doesn't matter. You'll get through to people. And it was a marker in my life to make those things happen. But all of these situations stacked. And then I was so involved in personal development, and I really wanted to learn how to do more. And I finally got a chance to go to work for Jim Rohn at 17 years old. And my mom kicked out my father. He went back east. And on Christmas Eve, she kicked me out and chased me out with a knife. I knew she wasn't going to kill me or stab me, but I wasn't going back in the house. She kept my 1968 Volkswagen. I'd worked $40 a week to earn. And I slept on the hill one night. It was raining. And then the next day, I was like, I can't stay in the rain. I went to this girlfriend's house, a girl that was a friend, not a girlfriend. And they let me stay in their, their little, washing machine room. And then I took the little money I had and I took these buses and I bought a book. I went to Claremont, California. It was about 15 miles away. And I bought this book at this bookstore called The Magic of Believing by Claude M. Bristol. And it talked about how to program your mind. And I was writing on the mirror in the laundry room all my goals. And I made these posters that only a idiot gets depressed, only a loser gets depressed. It's not true, but that was my way of leveraging myself, right? And I started to make these changes. And then I tried to go to work for Jim Rohn, and it was Christmas, so I had to keep working as a janitor. And what changed my life was finding that part that's inside of all of us that will not give up. And I was taking buses now because I had a car to go to San Marino, California. It was about an 18-mile place, but the number of buses you had to take took about almost 2 hours, 90 minutes to 2 hours. I go clean the banks because I could do 2 banks. I wasn't paid by the hour, it's by performance, and I could do an amazing job. And I left notes for people as if I was there. I was so connected. 2 a.m. I was on that bus to get home, and 3:30 a.m. or 4 I was going to bed and getting up 4 hours later to go to school and be student body president. And I was burning out, but one night I got to the bus stop on time, made it there at 2 a.m., no bus, 2:15, no bus, 2:30, no bus, 2:45, no bus. I had no one call. I'm 17 miles from home at least, right? Like, what am I going to do? And then all of a sudden a car pulls up, rolls down the window, goes, hey, bud, didn't you see there's a bus strike? There's no buses coming.
Oh, you got to be kidding me.
No. And so I was like, what am I going to do? And what am I going to do? And I was like, I'm going to run home. I am going to run the entire way. And my first starting out was just rage. It was like, I'll show her, my mom, for kicking me out. We're super close. No, she's passed away, but we weren't at that time, as you might guess. But anger only gets you so far. It's the fuel that burns out very quickly. So I started thinking about those books and programming your mind. I started doing these, not just affirmations where you go, I'm happy, but where you shout it, you engage your body, and I was running, going every day and every way, I'm getting stronger and stronger. And I do that. And I change the word every day and every stronger and stronger. And then I do that for 20 minutes. And then I do healthier. And then I do happier. And I ran 16 of the 17 miles. Last mile I walked. And it changed my life forever. To this day, that source of energy, that source of strength, that source of that I'll push through is a part of who I am. But it usually comes from challenge. If you look at the history of the world, good times create weak people. They're not bad people. They just have never been challenged. It's like a muscle. You're a bodybuilder. If I built my body, you don't get it by taking something light. You do something unbelievably difficult. And if you're going to do 10 curls and you can barely do 10 curls, that 12 is where all the growth is, right? So I had these experiences that challenged me so strongly, and I met the challenge, and it changed my sense of identity about who I was and what I was capable of. And then I couldn't help but spread that. I lost 30 pounds and helped my friends lose 30 pounds, and they started getting girls. And then I got addicted to knowing the answers, like being able to give people the answer to anything, their body, their emotions, their relationships. And so that obsession still continues to this day. And I've been doing this 48 years.
Tony, that's insane when you say 48 years. Tony, when you were around Jim, I've read Jim's books, and the stuff his voice, he sounded like Johnny Carson, by the way, right? If you put them together, it's like that area of Johnny Carson type of voice. What a great storyteller, right? The speed, the pacing. But when you're around Jim, we can spend time here, and then I can be in a room watching you negotiate, and then I can be in the room on Monday morning watching you run your leadership meeting, and then I can watch you when shit hits the fan. I'm seeing a different Tony, right? This is camera, everything that's there. When you worked with Jim, how close did you get to him where you saw certain things he did that maybe we've not even read about in books? Was there certain ways he ran meetings? Did he ever have a tough conversation? If he did, what was his approach for having a tough conversation? What made Jim so unique behind closed doors?
Well, I got close to him because I became the top guy in his company very quickly. But his company fell apart right at that time. He had all these offices in California, like 10 offices. They had about 20 salespeople in each. And I accelerated. I did better than anybody there only because it wasn't for me about money. It was about mission. It was about, I wanted to change lives. I was a zealot, and I found the way, and I was so persistent. And so I moved up in his company, and then gradually they called me one day, and the goal was to be an area sales director. You had your own office and 30 people. And they called me and said, Tony, we want to move you up. You're the best in the whole country. We want to sit down with you and chat with you. So that's when I got to sit down with Jim. And he said, you're unbelievable. This is what you've done. And he says, we're having a little bit of a change here. And he goes, how would you like to take on a city in LA? I said, I'd love to. He goes, what city do you want? I grew up poor, so I went Beverly Hills, thinking they were giving me the money. And then he goes, how many people do you want? I said, 30. It's the most anybody had, right? He goes, okay. He goes, when do you want to start? I said, tomorrow. He goes, great, you're in. I said, okay, who do I call to get the check? He goes, oh no, it's called phase 2. We have this new program where you're in charge. It's your business. You hire me to come in. You're a broker and you fill the event all by yourself and then you keep half the profits.
So the $35, you sell it out, 500 people come in, whatever that number is, 17,500. You keep 8, he keeps 80, whatever the number is.
1,000 people, but yes. But I'd never put 1,000 people in a room before, right? The theory was you put 30 people in the room and you followed up and you sold his other products and services. That was the business it was in. But I learned to book myself 3 times a day. I talked to groups where there was supposed to be 20 people there and 4 showed up and 2 were drunk. And I learned how to just take control and make an impact. And I filled these events up and I had my own business. All of a sudden I was a broker in business. So he made that happen. So the answer to your question was he was very separate. He had built his business in a network marketing business originally. And so he was protected and no one really was around Jim. But I got a chance later in life to get more connected to him when he was feeling his mortality and I spoke at his funeral. And he was just a very, very loving man who found answers that were common sense. And he was really moved by delivering them to people the same way I am in my life, but a very different style, as you know, than I do. He talked 1/10 my speed, right? And he had this great rhythm. He was I look at him as a business philosopher is really what he was. But I learned so much from him and it was a good basis. But the tools that made me grow even more, he gave me the philosophy that if you want things to change, you got to change. You want things to get better, you got to get better. But what changed me was learning the tools of neurolinguistic programming from John Grinder, where I learned, how to take somebody with a lifetime phobia and wipe it out in 20 or 30 minutes.
So, but I want to stay on Jim real quick, but it's so funny. Just yesterday, I'm at the house. I'm thinking about what book to give to my son next. And I have 2 books to choose from. One of them was Leading an Inspired Life, and I give him the other one because I said, you'll read this one afterwards. My oldest son, 12 years old, loves politics, so he got a different book. That book was impactful. And the other one that he wrote, 7 Strategies for Wealth and Happiness, the yellow cover book. I don't know if you remember that or not.
Yes.
So going back to it. So fill the room, 1,000 people. I'll come in. We'll split the ticket sales, whatever we have.
But I got to rent the hotel. I got to open the office. I got to do it all myself.
You're
none of which I've done.
So at this point, is Jim Rohn as big as Tony? Like, is he that big or no? He's not.
No.
Okay, got it. So Jim is local, 20 offices. People know within the space.
Almost all California.
Mostly California.
And we do 3 seminars every 8 weeks, right? For about 3.5 hours. My schedule's a little more intense than that.
How long did you do that with him when you were working with him?
I was with him for 17 to 21, basically 22. So about 4 or 5 years almost.
That's a great time to learn.
Unbelievable what chance to learn.
So from there, what year is this now? I'm trying to see what year are we in. This is
it'd be 1981, 82.
Okay, so 81, 82. Infomercial's not a thing yet, right?
No.
And so now you go away and you're going to do your own thing and you'll learn from this fellow. Is it Richard Grinder or is it?
No, John Grinder and Richard Randler are the 2 people, but they split up. So I learned mostly from John Grinder.
From John Grinder. And John Grinder comes up with this NLP programming that he's teaching you and you learn from him. And if I'm not mistaken, he had guys that were from salespeople to CIA agents coming in to learn from this guy, right? NLP. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you're going to educate us more on this here.
Yeah.
How did the introduction happen to him? And what were some of the profile of people that would attend the events?
Well, someone who came to work for me when I started my new company was, Achievement Enterprises there in Beverly Hills. And this guy was very interesting. And then a woman came to work for me, and they were both really into NLP. And so I said, explain it to me. And I started reading the books. And then I went to a class, and I had to talk my way in, because in those days, it was only therapists that were going there. And then he was working with the government on some of the individuals that you're describing, some of the three-letter agencies per se. But I went and I basically went to him and said, look, all these people here have been conditioned to do 20 years or 10 years or 5 years or 3 years of therapy. I said, that's their limitation. I don't have those limitations. I'll take this stuff and I'll implement it. You should bring somebody from the outside. And I said, besides that, I'm going to stick my ear against this is the Holiday Inn outside. He was doing this 6-month training at the Holiday Inn outside of LAX. I said, I'll just stick my ear and listen. So he let me come in, and I proved myself, because, he would leave and like a person started breaking down and having these, multiple dissociative patterns and freaking out. And everybody's freaking out. And I just got up and boom, and handled it. And then everybody's like, this kid got up and did all these things. And it was just because I was obsessed with mastering the skills. I didn't want to just, I wanted to help people to change now. Again, it was my drive that made me, my hunger to really learn, that made me strong at it. And I was also willing to try anything. I wasn't afraid of failing. And so gradually he and I eventually became partners. And then we went to, I got a chance to go through top secret clearance. And I went to the US Army at one point with him and convinced this general that I said, I can take any training you do in the entire Army, cut the training time in half, and increase the competency. He said, you're crazy. And I said, no, I'm expensive. And we negotiated this deal. But I thought John was going to be my partner. And the first deal they created for me was to do a 4-day pistol shooting program where 70% of the people qualified, 30% didn't. And that's the best they've done since World War II. So I said, I'll turn that around. I'll cut it in half, right? That's great confidence. But I also knew that, John Grinder, Dr. Grinder, he had been in the Special Forces. So I figured between he and I together, we'll do this. He's my partner. And the day I'm supposed to go there, after going through a year of top secret clearance and all that stuff, I'm going to Langley underground place. And I said, give me the best in the Army, the best in all the armed forces, and give me the best shooter coach. And I'm going to model them. I'm going to find out what is that they all do in common, and we'll put that into a training, and we'll excel at their training. And John Grinder calls me and says, Tony, goes, I'm really sorry. I've got an emergency. I got to fly to Germany. You're on your own. Click. And I start to go into a bit of a panic, right? But then I can't step out of it. And one of the great gifts of my life is I've done so much of my life where there is no net. And I'm sure you understand what I mean, right? When there's no net, you find a way to, I always tell people, if you want to take the island, burn your boats, right? So that day I burned my boats. I called one of the guys in the community of NLP that I knew disliked me because I dislodged him, being this kid who came up the ladder very quickly and became partners. And I said, I'm doing this deal, and they're only going to pay me, my deal is I only get paid if I cut the training time in half, and if I fail, I get nothing. I thought I'd tell you because I know you want to cheer me on, right? So it just made I couldn't go back. And I went in, and, these guys walked in, and, I'm 24 years old, and I'm wearing jeans and a T-shirt, and they go, where's the teacher? Where's the trainer? And I said, I'm him. These guys were 35 years old, one was 40. And he said, you're him? How long have you been shooting? I said, shooting what? He said, guns. I said, I've never shot a gun. And you're going to train us? I said, yeah, I can do this, no problem. And I said, close your eyes. And I had all of them go through their rhythm to shoot. But before I do that, they're like, no, we want to see you shoot. I said, I don't know how to shoot. So I get up there, I'm underground, and I shoot the thing, and I'm shooting a 45 caliber pistol, which, I didn't know has quite a kick. I put the bullet in the ceiling. This did not build confidence. But by the time I was done, I'd figured out every aspect of what each of them did that was not unique then, but was consistent. And one of the most important things I found, besides the motions, the movements, the preparation, the breathing, was that mentally, they didn't realize it, but they brought the target closer. So when I went to train people, I made the target 4 feet in front of them. Because when I tried to do it, it's seen forever. Boom, boom, boom. You build on success right through the center. Oh my God. Then 5, 10 feet, then 20.
Right.
And by the time we done, we did a 1.5 day program, qualified 100% of the people. And the colonel wrote a letter to the general saying it's the first breakthrough in pistol shooting since World War I. So that took me to a different level. Then I started knowing, man, I can model anything. I can make it happen. Then I modeled firewalking. So it just all expanded. And over the years, then I modeled whatever I wanted to learn, like business. So now I'm fortunate enough to have 114 companies. We do $8 billion in business now. And I have no business background. I learned it all by learning from the very best people in the world and modeling their strategies and compressing the time. And so it's now one of my great passions in life.
Tony, let me ask you, for you, are you lefty or righty?
Right-handed.
Okay, so when I'm already feeling the spirit of competition. It's insane. I mean, whether you want to identify that or not, at this, I feel your. I go back to the 22-year-old. At least let me go to that. I go to the 22-year-old Tony, and I feel fire, competitiveness, like in a big way. Okay, it's very obvious. The ambition, the fire's felt. Because I know what I was telling myself when I felt like I could compete. The moment I realized I could compete in the space, it was my secret weapon that nobody else knew. And I don't know what I mean by this. Like for you, you're born 229, right? Yes. February 29.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of people born on 229.
Leap year,
right?
yeah.
Right, it's a leap year, right?
When I'm 84, I'll be 21. It's a good deal.
It works backward. It works in your favor. That's why you look so young and you don't look your age. But did you? At what point did you feel like, because I know typically it's kind of like, well, I'm just a regular guy. You can't use that. You know how some people are, I'm just a regular guy, and I just kind of all this stuff. Maybe that would have worked 40 years ago. It's not going to work today. Everybody now knows you're not a regular guy. There's something deep down inside that you tapped into, right? When did you know that there was something unique about you, or like, I'm willing to go to levels that this other person's not going to willing to go to, and I'm willing to tolerate pain more than you will, and I will not stop until, what was that moment and what you told yourself? Because the competition is, for when I asked you, and I said, so when you think about Jim Rohn, was Jim Rohn who Tony is today? You're like, no, he would be running. My schedule was back-to-back, and he didn't run this, right? Okay. Was there a moment for you where you said, I think they have no clue what the F I'm about to do. They're going to find out who I really am here?
Well, I'm sure there were, but I mean, because I was on the other side of the track, so to speak, I had a chip on my shoulder, right? These people I thought were wealthy. They weren't even slightly wealthy, but when you don't have money for food, somebody that's well-fed looks like they're rich, right? And there were cliques, if you weren't part of the clique. And I wanted to be an athlete, but we had no money to go to Little League or things of that nature. But when my forefather, Jim Rohn, came along, who adopted me, he was a former semi-pro baseball player. So we started playing and everything else. But, I started when I was like 15 instead of like kids in my community were like 8, playing rookie league. But I was so driven. It was a way of finding love with my father, was by becoming better. Mm-hmm. And I also had huge drive because I just wanted to be more. I didn't want to settle. I looked at our family and all the pain that I saw my mother go through and we would go through, and I was like, I'm not going to have a future like that. I'm going to find some way to do more. So it produced drive. So even when I was in sports, I was so competitive in junior high school that I was a little guy, but I played linebacker and quarterback. And during practice, guys would complain because I'd stick them so hard. And I'd say, get strong. I mean, I'm half your size, but you get low, you can take anybody out, right? So I had this intensity in that level. But when I got to serving people, that disappeared. It wasn't like I wasn't competing with anybody. I was competing with what I was capable of. And, I'd read so many autobiographies. And I remember Dr. J saying, in fact, when I met Jordan years later, I asked him, what is it that's made you the best in the world? Is it God-given talent? Is it skill? Is it ability? What is it? And he was cool. He said, listen, Tony, I don't have fame, anything with you. It's like, I got a lot of God-given talent. But he told me about when he was in high school and the coach cut him because he said, you're not the best player because you're not maximizing your abilities, right?
10th grade.
And he said, so now I don't compete with anyone. I compete with the best I can be. Every day, my goal is to find a way to do more than I've ever done before within me. I'm not competing with anybody else. And I called him, I said, that was Dr. J's philosophy. And I'll never forget his face. He goes, you know that? Because I read his autobiography. So early on.
Like Julius Erving, Dr. J.
Yeah, Julius Erving.
Got it, yeah.
And he was, he was the champion at his stage of life, right? So from
he was
early
a Michael
on,
before Michael.
Yeah, so from early on, it's like I'm competing with the next level of who I am. I'm not competing with anybody else. There's nobody to compete with. It's like there's a different level I'm here to deliver.
When did it get to that? Because even with Michael, did you see the documentary Last Dance?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so listen. I get that about beat your prior best, and that's been a big part of my philosophy in my life. But that guy was a psycho competitor. You know that. That guy
he still is. Go play golf with him or anything else.
I've not done that. I've not done that. But I watched that documentary. Every one of my kids was required to watch it. I rented out the breakers, and I brought every one of my executives. We watched it together for 3 days, and we talked hours on top of hours on those episodes, right? So But there is a part, because beating your prior best to anybody out there is you can have a very good life and you can get to new heights. But there's certain people that become the GOAT. There's a difference. You're not one of the best. You're the best in your space.
Well,
You're not, and I'm telling you this, and I've been watching, and I know the names in this space. What is that part? That's what I'm interested in. If somebody's watching, imagine the 17-year-old Tony is watching this right now, okay? And let's not even say 17, the 21-year-old, like where you've had a little bit of experience, Jim, you've made money, you kind of are getting that experience, 21, 22. What gave you that thing to say, hey man, watch world? I understand the chip. Like for me, sometimes when I'm sitting down with Brady and I'm having a conversation with him and I'll say, hey, at the event, I'll say, my experience from finding GOATs, not people who have a good life or a great life. There's many people that have great lives, but there's only one GOAT, right? You typically have someone that loved them growing up, because you have to experience unconditional love to know that it's worth the pain you got to go through. The pattern you see, the second one is someone you could never win over and please. You just can't. You can, no matter how much money and success you bring, that person's never going to be impressed by your success. Never, okay? And then the last one is choosing your enemies wisely, something that drives you, like drives the hell out of you.
Yes.
What was yours?
My early one was watching people in therapy for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And when I got involved with NLP, seeing it could be done in minutes. And I used to go to destroy therapists. I used to attack them. Now I've trained, literally hundreds of thousands of them.
Got it.
In fact, they can watch my stuff now and get credits to remain a therapist, even though I'm not a therapist myself.
So that drove you, actual therapist.
It was because I was so mad that somebody would be 10 years still dealing with a problem that I knew could be dealt with in a day or two,
Very
an hour or two.
I got it.
And so I remember I got on a radio show in Vancouver, and I went on the show, and I didn't know it was a shock jock. I didn't know what a shock jock was then. And so the guy starts, setting me up and attacking me and saying, well, how old are you? And you don't have a degree, and how are you going to do this? And he just starts going after me in every way you possibly can. And then he brings a psychiatrist on who starts attacking me verbally, because he said, there's no way you can wipe things out as fast as you're saying. There's just absolutely no way. You're a liar. You're a charlatan. Yeah. This is on national radio. Mm-hmm. And so my competitiveness came out in that moment very intensely. And so I turned to the guy and very calmly said over the radio, I said, sir, are you a scientist? He said, of course, I'm a physician. I said, good. So if you're a scientist, you must be stating your hypothesis, because your hypothesis is I'm a liar and a charlatan, because you've never met me, right? You never met my clients. So you can only tell me what you believe. I said, so if you have a hypothesis and you're a true scientist, you have to test it, right? And the voice goes, yeah. And I said, well, I'm doing a free guest event at the Holiday Inn tomorrow night, 7 p.m. I'm going to do a series of demonstrations. I suggest you come and prove I'm a charlatan. Bring me one of your worst patients. Bring me somebody that you've worked on for years and not be able to change. I said, I'm sure you got plenty of those. You want to play hardball? I can play hardball, especially in those days. Yeah. I'm a lot softer today. But I was still proving myself to myself and other people, I think, at that stage. You're immature, so I was intense. And so the guy goes, we all have people that aren't ready to change yet. I said, well, that's funny. I haven't found any. Of course, I'd done 4 therapies at that point, but I didn't mention that, right? And he goes, well, I have this one woman, she has this snake phobia. She goes to sleep at night. She has a dream that snake bites her in the face. And if you ever had an intense dream like that, it fires off your adrenal glands and you wake up. Mm-hmm. How often? 3 to 5 times a night. How many years you've been treating her? 7 years. I said, bring her down. That should take me 10 or 15 minutes. And I said it directly. And that guy goes, ah! And the guy cuts him off, says, see you right at the Holiday Inn. So I show up the next day at the Holiday Inn. I'm hoping in those days to get, 150 people to show up for a free guest event. 500 people show up. I mean, there's not seating in the room. People are standing on the walls. If the fire department comes
just to see,
because they want to see the shootout.
That's
at
right.
OK Corral.
Yeah, that's right.
Me and this guy.
Does
right?
he shows up?
He shows up, but he's not there. I'm looking around, and I don't know. Do you do this when I meet somebody on the phone? I can't help it. I make a picture of mine, what I think
what
they
look like.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm picturing, okay, oh, be there. I'm picturing this giant guy with a scared woman on his arm, right? And I'm looking for something. Nobody like that. So I get up to introduce myself in those days. Hi, I'm Tony Robbins. I said, I'm going to do some demonstrations today to show you can make changes in minutes you thought would take months or years. And right when I say this, the side door bursts open like a movie. And this guy about, half my size up to here walks in with this woman on his arm, walks straight to the front and stands there while I'm speaking. And I go, excuse me, looks like I have a visitor. I just go down and shake his hand. He wouldn't shake my hand. He goes, here's the woman. And my whole career was made in that moment. I brought her on stage and I said, ma'am, I understand you've had certain phobias to certain things for a period of time. How do you feel about snakes? And I shouted it. If you've ever seen a phobia, it's not just fear, it's uncontrollable shaking response. And then I calmed her down and I said, and you've been treated for 7 years by that psychiatrist right there? And she goes, yeah. And I said, okay. And then I started doing this work. It took me about 15 minutes. And when I was done, everybody's watching the whole thing. I said, how do you feel about snakes? No response. I was totally fine. I said, that's great. So I've always been about demonstration to make it really clear. So there's a piece back here on the table and I grab this bag and I pull the bag out and the bag's moving slightly underneath and the people in the audience see it and they start to anticipate. And I pull out just a little gardener snake, pull the gardener snake in front of her. And instead of screaming or shaking, she did this. She just pulled back. And I said, how do you feel? She goes, they're not very attractive. And I said, well, I know you feel some fear, but notice there's no spitting, no shaking. You're not screaming. I said, why don't you hold it? She goes, I don't know. And the audience starts going, hold it. Hold it. It's like a movie, man. You can't make this stuff up. And so finally the lady grabs it, squeezes the snake. Yeah. I said, don't kill it, right? And so that launched my career. So then every night I was doing a different type of event. I had every kind of change you can imagine. And I started doing these impossible interventions. I'll do one session. I don't care what it is. You're addicted. It's something. I'll turn around and you pay me nothing. And it was $1,000 in those days, which was a huge amount of money, So, but I did it to put it on the line. I'm putting myself on the line. If I don't get a result, you don't get anything. And that's how I built it. And then I had a woman had an orgasm in 10 years and I gave an orgasm without touching her. And guys are like, can you teach me to do that when I'm tired? And then I started working with sports teams. And then all of a sudden.
You literally sat down with a lady who hadn't had an orgasm for 10 years and you taught her how to do it without touching her.
I didn't teach her. I didn't touch her. I eliminated the barrier that she had.
What was the barrier?
In her head, she was constantly analyzing every single moment. Well, a woman is very different than a man. They can't have that experience unless they let go completely. So I got her to let go completely and then experience the joy that she's wanting to have. But she had all these blockages, all the pain of other relationships, problems. It was complex. Sure. But it took me about 45 minutes to do it. But when I started doing that, then I had all of a sudden politicians. I had sports teams.
Not politicians needing help with orgasm, just politicians calling for other reasons.
Well, they might have needed that also. But that's not what I helped them with. By nature, they're politicians, so I'm sure they don't have that many orgasms, right? But all of a sudden, I'm working with Olympic athletes in 1984 in LA. That's how long I've been doing this. And the guy I worked with wasn't supposed to win the team, and he ended up winning the 1500 freestyle and swimming, and that gave me another notch, and then the Army, and then all of a sudden working with Nelson Mandela and Mother Teresa and Gorbachev and Clinton, and I'm only 32, so I'm going to be 65 in about 30 days here. So it's been 48 years of that continued growth and expansion. Then I got into businesses and figuring out the patterns in businesses. It's all patterns, as you know, Patrick. Like if anyone listening wants to say, okay, the world seems uncertain. And I have 5 kids and 5 grandkids. So I have a 50-year-old daughter and I have a 3.5-year-old daughter because 3 of my kids I adopted early on when I was just 24, 25 years old. And so I look at my grandkids, especially, and my youngest daughter, and I think 40% of the jobs, if you believe the studies, are going to be gone because of AI, because of robotics, because of nanotechnology and so forth. So how do I arm them to do well in the future? And the answer is there's 3 skills everybody needs, and they're so simple. And they're the skills that make anybody masterful. It's made you successful in your insurance business. It's what's made you successful in this business. The first thing is pattern recognition. If you start recognizing patterns, fear disappears. Because like right now when people say, oh, we've never been so divided, or now the country has a little more optimism, but we've never been so divided. That's total BS. I can show you the letters that are put out that were posted between Jefferson and Adams. And if you read what they wrote, it makes anything the left or right has said about each other look calm compared to that. So it's like we go in cycles. So when you recognize a pattern, you no longer react. It's like losers react, leaders anticipate. Anticipation is power. So when you know the pattern, and that's what makes anybody great, they see the pattern. But what makes them really great is the second skill, when you learn to use the patterns. So if you and I look at anybody, you see somebody that's great in investing, and I've interviewed more than 50 of the very best in the world. The Ray Dalias, the Carl Icahns, the Warren Buffetts, all the best in private equity. And what you begin to see is there are certain patterns, even though they go about it differently, that are universal. If you sow the same seeds, you reap the same rewards. But they know how to use it. If you see somebody great in music or dance or a movie maker, they know where to move the camera, to move your emotion. They bring it in close, when to bring the music up, how to do it. They know it. That makes them masterful. But the third level skill is pattern creation. That's what you've begun to do. That's what I've begun to do. It's like when you learn to play a piano, most people learn someone else's patterns. You learn to see the patterns, recognize them, then you learn to use them. But if you do enough other music, then now you get to come out and you start creating things. So I'm standing on the shoulders of all the people before me, as are you, because I learned so many things to them. But now at this stage of my life, the last 15, 20 years, I've been able to create things because I know what those patterns are. So those skill sets, that's how my kids will do well. Because if you can learn rapidly and recognize patterns, there's nothing you can't do well at. And that's really, by the way, noting the patterns of where we are in history, the pattern of where you are in your own life. I'll give you a simple example. What made human beings go from survival, living in fear, where we're hunter-gatherers, to where we could stay in one place, build communities, build cities, build countries, have homes, have the education. What made that possible was one pattern recognition that changed humanity. Do you know what it was?
Pattern recognition. That you're not talking fire. You're not talking pattern recognition. Community, that we need each other. What is it?
Seasons.
Seasons.
Until we understood seasons, we had to constantly move from place to place and hope we could find our food. But once we understood seasons, we knew if you do the right thing at the wrong time, there is zero reward. But if you do the right thing at the right time, the rewards are immense. So if you plant in the winter, I don't care how hard you work, or the summer, you get nothing. It's like recognizing the seasons changed humanity. Well, there's a season in your own life. Some of your viewers are younger, maybe 0 to 21. Think of that as springtime. When it's springtime, what does spring have? Everything grows easily. If it's a springtime in business, you think you're a genius because your business grows. Everybody's business grows because it's a time of tremendous optimism and immense growth. The environment's different, people's attitudes are different. But these cycles go through 18, 20-year cycles. If you study 1,000 years of Roman history, which I've done, or 500 years of Anglo-American history, you see about every 18 to 20 years, there's a shift. It's kind of like we exhaust an emotion. Do you ever smile so much your face hurt?
Yes.
You know what I mean? So you need a change.
Sure.
Well, after springtime, the easy time, comes a summertime. And the summer is always a testing time. It's tougher. A lot of people plant in the spring and they go, where's my crop? Are you new? You have to get through all the seasons, right? So summer tests people. And then you go to another reaping time. You go to the fall where it's easy again, where now things flow. Economies go crazy. People want to give you a mortgage even though you barely have a pulse and not a job. You remember those days,
Of course,
right?
no income, no assets.
And boom, just give it to anyway. And markets go through the roof. But again, what follows that is winter. And the great thing about life is you never skip from the fall to spring. You always go through winter. Some are short, some are long, some are hard, some are easy. But we go through them. They have a purpose. They weed out the weak. They make us, if we push through it, stronger. They make everything better going forward. So there's a purpose in every season. So 0 to 21, you could call the springtime of most people's lives, where some of us had to go to work at 7, 8 years old to support our family, but still, you were still protected. If there's a war, you're not going to war. Someone's protecting you. Someone's mostly providing for you, usually providing for you. You're being fed information, you're learning. But 22 to 42, that's the summertime. That's the testing time. That's when most people come out and go, I know I was taught all this, but I'm going to test what I believe. You know, and you're very optimistic. In fact, you think you're invincible at 22, 23, 24. You go like, I'm going to be president of the United States, I'm going to be a multi-billionaire, and I'm going to have 100 relationships simultaneously, and everyone's going to be happy. And then you're 30 and you're going, I can't even keep one relationship happy, and I'm burnt to the ground.
That's right.
So you go through the phase. But think of 22 to 42 as being like the soldier of society. In fact, if we go to war, you're the ones going to war, 22 to 42. In business, you're the soldier. You're learning, you're growing, you're grunting it out, you're hustling, right? If you work hard during that time, and you've done well during spring, you come to the fall, which is, you know, you look at 43 to 63, that's your power period, right? That's the period where you had explosive growth in your business, as an example. That's when you became who you are, where your name became known. That's where all of a sudden you can do probably more today with your pinky than when you work 20 hours a day. And now if you work 20 hours a day, it produces generational impact much greater than that. So that period of time, by the way, 22 to 42, if people are in that stage of life right now, it's statistically the most unhappy period. Because people are trying, they thought it was going to be easy. It's not so easy, they eventually learn, usually in their early 30s. Yeah. And then what they learned is, well, not as easy as I thought. I'm not as invincible as I thought. And they have to figure things out. And they're trying to prove themselves to themselves and others. They haven't figured it all out yet. Now, some people do these seasons earlier, some later, but it's a good range. in that power period, that's when you have greatest economic growth. That's when you start having long-term relationships. But the ultimate time, and I say to you this as a brother who's heading in that direction, because I never would have believed it, is really when you get to 63 to 83 or 63 to 103 or 63 to 120, which is the oldest humans, the final season, the winter season. But that's the season in which you really are the elder of society. And if you've done your job up front, you've reaped so much, all you want to do is give back. And you don't worry about what people think about you because you sure would like to make everybody happy, but you know, unless you got holes, Jesus couldn't pull it off. So I don't know if you're going to do that, right? So it's like, I'm here to help the people that are interested. I'm not here to say I'm the right thing for everybody. And you own yourself at a different level, and you really can move a pinky and make things happen.
So, I remember you had the gentleman from Fort Turning on, and we had him on as well.
Yes.
Very interesting guy to talk to. And they wrote that book on December 31st of 97, the fact that we're going to go through these 4 turnings. Neil Howe and what's the co-authors, and William Strauss. But,
I interviewed them in 97.
I remember that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is,
them again.
trust me, I know. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah.
So, with you, Tony, and this is very helpful, but I want to transition into the next
But
phase.
I want to mention one thing, if I may, if you please let me. The same thing happens in history. So just for a second, if you're born in 1910, you don't have to be a historian to think about this, and those first 20 years are protected. People born in 1910 were born at a time when World War I was going on, but then we went and solved the war, won the war, came back and had the roaring 20s, had this incredible economy, right? So when they're 10 years old, the economy's going crazy. We got all this new technology. We got cars, we got planes, we got radio, we got television. And that generation was called flappers, because they were looked down on like a lot of, let's say, Z generation or millennials are by X generation people or sometimes baby boomers, because they didn't have to go through the tough times, right? And they didn't. They frankly didn't. But what happened to that kid born in 1910 and 1929 when he's 19 thinking he's going to go get a car and he's going to go get a party? The whole world turned upside down. The Depression, people jumping out of buildings, the Dust Bowl, people standing in line for bread. And by the way, they made it through 10 years of depression. Now, that doesn't mean every day is dark. You can be in winter and have beautiful days. 31, 32 were nice times. But the overall thing was testing, and they became strong because they had to be. Then right when they turned 29, 1939, what happens? World War II. You and I weren't alive then, but anybody who was alive then, it looked like the world was ending. Hitler was taking over countries in days, blitzkrieging everywhere. And so what happened is that generation volunteered and went to war, and they won the war, and they came back the heroes. They're now known as the greatest American generation, and they were known as flappers and losers. What made them strong was pushing through winter. Everybody, listen to me now, everybody goes through winter if they live 80 years plus.
You don't have a choice.
It's just which season. Are you going to do it in the early stage, the middle stage, late stage?
It's coming.
But watch this. Think about those people. They come home, and think how the world changes when after winter, it's now springtime, and the vets are now moving out to the suburbs, and they get basically a free down payment on the home, and we have all these new technologies. Think about the 50s and early 60s until Kennedy is killed. There's a level of optimism in this country that's amazing. Springtime. After Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King, it's a different world. It's a testing summer where young and old fight each other. It happens every 80 years. Generational fights. I'm not going to war. It was a completely different mindset. Those people raised kids differently than they did. They weren't around. They were doing their mission or doing their whatever their love in, and so their kids became latchkey kids. Kids that were let themselves in the house and watch the television, have fun for themselves, so they developed different values as a generation, the X generation, more pragmatic. If you ask people during the 60s and 70s, which they did in the universities, what's more important, a philosophy of life that will make you happy, or the pragmatic skills to make you financially secure or free? 82% said philosophy of life.
Wow, 60s,
80s, 90s, 2000s, they asked the same question, complete reversal. 81% saying, no, pragmatic skills to be financially free. And what season are we in now? Winter. And when it's winter, everything's exaggerated. It's World War III, we're all gonna die. Some of the same things were happening before. You don't have that mindset. It's a fear time. We're about 3/4 of the way through it if you study historians, Fort Turning guys, various people will tell you that. We still have to go through some more economic challenges. We still have to go through probably some form of war, even a cyber war with China or something. But on the other side of it is another springtime. What I want people to get is, you gotta know where you are in your life and where you are in history, and you gotta learn to take advantage of it. You can't complain that it's winter. During winter, if you start a business in winter and you succeed, 60% of all the Fortune 1000 companies that are alive today, the biggest and most successful companies, could have been born in any one of those 4 seasons. They were all born in winter.
Wow.
In a recession or depression.
Gotta love it.
From FedEx to Disney. Disney was depression.
Yeah.
FedEx was a recession. I can walk you through them all. So that process makes you strong.
Sure.
And that is why, here's the history of the world in 4 sentences, and I'll shut up. Good times create weak people. They're not bad people, they're just weak because they haven't been challenged. Weak people create bad times. Bad times create strong people. Strong people create great times. So millennials and Zs are the next heroes, and they're already starting it because they're starting to go through winter. We're not done with it. They're going to open up things up. I'm very excited about what the future will have. I'm very optimistic about it because studying history shows you patterns. There's no guarantees, but there's patterns. And when you understand the patterns, fear disappears. You're able to figure out how to maximize anything you're involved with. And so I think it's important to understand these patterns, and I help people see the patterns. Whatever stage of life you're in, there's predictable problems and there's predictable opportunities. I see the stage, you're 46?
46.
Yeah, 46. So I'm 65. I can remember 46 so vividly, what was going through. Now, you and I are different in lots of different ways, but there's certain patterns that are immutable. And so if I can help in some time for someone to say, hey, here's some opportunity, here's the challenge you can face, so you can anticipate the challenge, then I can help you have a lot less suffering, a lot more joy, and that's my mission.
Yeah, and you know, when you explain the patterns, I mean, that's really the way you solve a business. Like, you know,
right.
Hey, blue ocean strategy, what's the pattern? Increase, decrease, boom, create, eliminate. Hey, what's the marketing for this? So I just need the formula. Once I figure out the formula, like when we do consulting for engagements for businesses, the first thing I say is, tell me your formulas in your business. What do you mean? Doing what times what plus this minus this equals $1 million. Can you show me that formula? I don't know what you're talking about. If we can figure out the best formulas within your business, we drive it, we're going to get the results. How can we drive that more?
It doesn't matter what business you're in.
It doesn't matter what business you're in.
But you have to become a business owner, not an operator. The death of most young entrepreneurs, and even older entrepreneurs, is you get in and then you hire the person who's most talented for the least amount of money, you. Then the next people you hire are not as skilled, and so you know you can do it better, so you end up doing everything.
It's funny, yeah.
I could not run 114 companies at the size and scope at $8 billion, doing everything else that I do, and be a father and be a human, but I became an owner. So as an owner, I'm strategic. There's a dozen I run real directly. The rest of them, I'm strategic. I come in and do the very thing you're doing. I do my business mastery programs. It's like a boot camp for businesses twice a year. And I don't care. We got people in there with $1 billion business. We got people just getting started with the business. And we guarantee them their money back if in 18 months or less, they don't at least grow their business 30 to 130%. And they all do it because the pattern is so simple. On a big company or small company, there's still core patterns.
Are you driving? Are you holding accountability? Are you solving problems?
All the above.
So,
but 80% of success in life and in business is psychology, meaning the mindset and the emotion. You can get the answers if you have the right mindset. 20%, and it's a very important 20%, is the strategy. The right strategy can save you 10 years. So I'm a strategist. But I always know I've got to make sure your psychology is strong enough first so that no matter what season we're in, you can do well.
That makes sense. Nowadays, more than ever, the brand you wear reflects and represents who you are. So for us, if you wear a Future Looks Bright hat or a Valuetainment gear, you're telling the world, I'm optimistic. I'm excited about what's going to be happening, but you're a free thinker. You question things. You like debate. And by the way, last year, 120,000 people got a piece of Future Looks Bright gear with Valuetainment. We have so many new things. The cufflinks are here. New Future Looks Bright. This is my favorite, the green one. Just yesterday, somebody placed an order for 100 of these. If you watch the PBD podcast, you got a bunch to choose from. White ones, black ones. If you smoke cigars and you come to our cigar lounge, we have this high quality lighter cutter and a holder for the cigars. We got sweaters with the Valuetainment logo on it. We got mugs. We got a bunch of different things. But if you believe the future looks bright, if you follow our content and what we represent with Valuetainment, with PBD Podcast, go to vtmerch.com. And by the way, if you order right now, there's going to be a special VT gift inside just for you. So again, go to vtmerch.com, place your order, tell the world that you believe the future looks bright. Tony, let me transition into this topic. I'm curious to know what you'll say about this. So, you know, I've been in sales for 25 years, and I've recruited salespeople for 25 years. And, you know, at first you're kind of like, oh my God, I'm going to help you. You're going to become this. I believe in you. And then you're like, dude, oh my God, this is ridiculous. I can't save this guy. I can't save that guy. Then you pattern, and you're like, look for patterns of the individual. Okay, he's got the right attitude. She played sports, is used to challenging, is used to hard work, came from a team environment. Okay, then you look for certain patterns, and you'll start seeing certain people. Do you think some people are, and this could be just politically or personality-wise, do you think some people who are math people and logical, they're conservative, do you think people that are born more with creative, right brain, they're liberal, and then maybe even some of the zodiac, I'm curious to know what you'll say about zodiac, is there certain people where you'll see patterns to say, that guy's independent, he knows how to entertain both ideas, and then say, here's what I think we need to be doing, right? So, and then negative and positive. Are there people that you believe are born negative, positive? Like, is there such a thing as a crap magnet? Somebody that they just can't help themselves, they can't be saved. Do you believe in that?
No.
Okay.
I think I do believe we have nature that we're born with.
Okay.
And I look at lots of different patterns to understand what makes somebody tick. Not just one. I use Chinese medicine as one to notice, is this person more water? Are they more wood? Each of those qualities, you're kind of born with certain things. If you're wood driven, as an example, in Chinese medicine, you're a pioneer, you're driven, you push. This would be a very strong one for you, for example. That wood person has got to grow. That wood person, they face challenges with more intensity. Every one of these also under stress or in a negative state, their positives can become a negative. Those people get angry very easily if it doesn't move forward, right? Steve Jobs would be a perfect example of that, right? It's like, if you know Steve Jobs, he was brutal, right? But he was committed to the outcome, whatever it takes. If you get around somebody who's fire-driven, this is somebody who's born where they're always joking. They're super optimistic, everything's funny, and some people are irritated by them because they're cracking up about when they're talking about something serious, right? But fires burn. They have this tremendous energy. But fires also, they burn out very quickly. If one of the things they have physiologically, because Chinese medicine treats everyone differently based on your constitution, right? Physiologically, if they don't eat, they get hangry. My wife is a fire, by the way, and I'm got very strong wood and a lot of strong fire. So she has got this tremendous energy and excitement, but we don't go anywhere without food, because we know what's going to happen, right? The sweetest person on earth is going to become crazy. If you're somebody more earth, you're more the person, less extroverted, more, you're the peacekeeper. What you care about is everybody getting along. You care about harmony and the community. My second strongest is actually earth, because that's how I build communities. That's what I do. That's why I care as deep as I do. Then there's some people that are metals. By the way, these are based on the seasons. They just look at fall in two levels. They look at the beginning of fall, end of fall. Beginning is earth, the end is metals. And metals is someone who is very, very precise. Everything has to be a very specific way. They're very elegant in their delivery. They think things through very, very specifically. And the challenge for them is if it doesn't go exactly that way, they can get very frustrated and get a lot of grief in them. And then there's water. Water's like the philosopher, the person that they lose themselves in things and they go off. And by the way, we have all these qualities, but it's which one's strongest in you, right? The water wants to know truth, and they think it through, and they lose themselves. So just as an example, understanding those, that's one typology. I use dozens, right? That helps me know that, okay, in my life, my wife's fire. I know that this is my fire. She's going to burn this way. I don't get upset by it. I don't think she should be like me. If I got a son, which I do, that's more earth, he's not going to be as driven as me. I used to think he's got to have the same drive.
Jarek is?
Yes, he's unbelievable. He's got a heart of gold, and he works hard and does a great job. He's an unbelievable coach.
You can say he's a sweet guy. He's sweet.
He's got more earth. Right. He can fire off his wood, but it feels a little not natural for him as real, right? Sure. And then, I can look at my other son is fire. He's always cracking up. So each of my kids are differently as well. I've got, in my life, my wife couldn't carry. So we have a woman who's been with us for 12 years, a dear, dear friend, traveled with us everywhere. Her name's Mary. And Mary's part of our family. And she carried our child, our latest child, because my wife couldn't carry. So we're a family. We didn't send her away. Yeah, she's our surrogate, but we kept her. So we even made her the I've saved dies that she's the person who ends up with our child. That's how deep it is. But she's very much a water person, Mary is. And so if we want to go to a movie, and I'm going to a movie to escape, I want to go take off, here's the time of the movie, let's go, right? And then I'm like, where's Mary? She got caught up in something. And I used to get frustrated about it. Now I anticipate it. Mary's going to get lost, so I'm going to let her know it's 15 minutes earlier. I'm going to go find those reminders, and I don't get upset about it. So my point is, I could give you a dozen of these examples. This is only one example where understanding people's nature is where now you can empower people the most, not making them be like you. That's the problem people do with their kids. You have how many kids?
4 of them.
4 kids.
Yeah.
I know, I'm sure you don't have a favorite kid, but do you have an easier kid?
Do I have an easier kid? Yeah, I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't he more like you or she?
Well, the one that's more like me is super competitive, but I don't have a challenge with any one of them.
That's great.
I'll tell you, like, one of them is, oldest one is purely politics and fighting. He reads and devours books. Like, he just finished a book on Thomas Sowell, 600 pages. He just, he'll go through Atlas Shrugged, Fountainhead. He'll just kind of go through it, right?
Yes.
The other one is...
How old is he?
He's 12.
Got it.
The 11-year-old is a sports guy. He trains every day 3-4 hours. And for soccer, he's got straight A's.
Yeah.
And his worst grade is 93.
That's awesome.
And he's extremely independent and prepared. My 2 girls, the obviously youngest one is 3. She's just the most charming, charismatic out of the entire family. But I would say a couple of them, my oldest, my wife would tell you, has a side of my personality and a side of hers. And my youngest son has a lot of me in him.
Yes.
A lot of me in him.
Yes.
So he likes to always be around me.
Yes. The one that's most like you is usually the easiest to influence, because you try to influence them the way it would influence you. If you clean your room, what worked for you, you'll do with that kid and he'll respond. The other one might say read between the lines, or maybe you won't do that, but certainly not going to respond, right, at the same level.
I think what you're trying to say is, and babe, if you're listening, he's trying to say have more kids so you can, like, I'm trying to get my, that's how I interpreted it, Jen. But go ahead. You were saying, I digress.
I love that. No, I'm just suggesting that most people are good at influencing people that are like themselves. And that the more you understand how people are different, to influence another person, you have to know what already influences them. And so when you're talking about these people that you're describing in salespeople, here's a question for you. Can you take a very non-social person and make them into a great, can they be a great salesperson? Could they do well in a sales job?
Great. You can make them a 7. Can I make them a 9 or a 10 naturally, where another guy's naturally comfortable doing that? Probably not.
Probably not. You could probably do a 9 for a short period of time when they're really hungry and driven. But the second question is, will they do the job well long term? And the answer is no, because it doesn't match their nature.
That's right. I agree.
If you take someone who's very super social and make them an accountant, can they do a good job? Yes. Will they do a good job long term?
Bored out of their minds. They got to get out. They got to be around people.
So you have to match the nature to the person, as opposed to saying this is the wrong person. You've got people you've brought in that maybe you didn't recognize the patterns yet of who are the best. One of the ways we do it in salespeople in all of my companies, I learned this from a partner I had years ago who passed away. We know that we need somebody in that position. I want someone in that position that cares, that connects with people. But if they care so much, sometimes they just accept limitations. If I accept your limitations, then there's no growth for you, right? There's a sale's always made. Either I persuade you what's possible, you persuade me what's not. Yeah. So you need someone with ego strength who can take rejection. So what we do in our companies, we have a standard process. We put out an ad, let's say, that says looking for the very best influencers, top of the line, world class, nothing less, great opportunities, great economics. Call only if you're world class. And then they call and they say, I'm calling for this job. And they talk for a few seconds and we say, oh yeah? Well, you don't sound world class to me. The person says, well, can you tell me about the job? No, tell me about you. And within a few seconds, we usually hang up the phone. Now, we do that with everyone, even the most talented people. Mm-hmm. Why? Because we're working for the guy that'll call us back, and he'll say, oh, there must have been a bad connection. You disconnected from me. We said, no, we just weren't getting it. And we'll hang up again. The person will come 3 times and we'll use humor or connection or break our pattern. That's the person we now take to an interview. When we do the interviews, we do the same things. You get rejected so many times going through our process that only the absolute strongest ego's there, but we're also looking for the strongest caring. So we look for someone, I think of it this way. Good people are found and then trained, not just trained. For a particular position. It's different for everybody based on their nature.
Sure. So now, we got DISC, STAR, all these other things that are out there that we can use. So there's a lot of people that would love to work for Tony Robbins. Okay, some of them get a chance to work for Tony Robbins. But you've talked about it where I think one time, what was the amount of money that one of your partners or somebody took? I don't know why I remember a big number. It was $400 million, I think it was.
Yeah, $125 million.
$125 million. Okay. So how does a Tony allow or not catch a pattern or somebody with a bad character who comes in that's able to take advantage of the great Tony Robbins?
Yes,
You got to be kidding me. How does that happen?
Well, it happened at a much earlier age, but it also happened because I looked at somebody who had taken a company. I known this person for more than 10 years, wanted to do business with them. And he worked with a large network marketing company at the time. He took them from losing $1 million a day to making $1.6 billion in EBITDA. So the track record was pretty.
1.6 in EBITDA?
In EBITDA. And I won't tell you the company, Amway. And and so they were losing money. He turned them around. His name is Bill. And Bill always wanted to do business with me, but he'd been there for a long time. And then one day, he had a meeting and the founders weren't involved and the kids were involved. And the kids were in a situation where he wanted them in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where they're based, to help, take on and help sponsor this, this center for kids that were left behind. And he only wanted $1 million from each, and they all have more money than they could ever dream of. And they all turned him down, and they all bought brand new Gulfstreams, each of them. And it pushed him over the edge and goes, Tony, I'm out of here. I'm leaving. I'm going to come join you. So we're going to form a company and go overseas and do this. And then he didn't call me for 3 weeks after this. And John Paul DeJoria, if you know, Paul Mitchell Hair Care, or if you know Patron Tequila, multi-billionaire, he was my partner as well in doing this.
So we're going to go make this. He lives close to you. The Patron, we looked at his house. He's in the Millionaire, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
So anyway, the two of them come to Fiji. We have a meeting. We agree. Then he doesn't talk to me for 3 weeks. I'm like, well, something's wrong. He finally calls me up and says, Tony, I don't know what to do. I went to the board meeting and said, I shouldn't participate in this board meeting. I'm going to go off with Tony Robbins, start this business. And one of the founders of Amway, who's since passed, got him, and there was no Zoom in those days, got a satellite link. And he was having a heart transplant and said, you're going to leave me in this situation? He didn't like the kids. He loved the founders. He goes, I don't know what to do. I said, brother, you got to stay there. I mean, I'm disappointed. Obviously, we got to stay. He goes, it's not fair to you. Because it doesn't matter. It's not fair. You got to stay there. And so then he said, well, when the founder dies, we can become partners. I said, oh, great. I'm going to root for the founder to die to make this happen. So long story shortened, he finally came to me and said, he's still alive, but if we take one of his kids, we can be partnered with them, not in network marketing. We can build this set of nutritional companies together, and we'll have $1.6 billion worth of resources here to help make that happen. But what I didn't know is that the co-founder, or one of the children there, we thought he was a billionaire. He represented himself a billionaire and signed the deal. He had not inherited any money at that point. He only had $5 million to his name. And we went and purchased Twin Labs and several other companies. And then what happened was, overnight, Twin Labs had a lawsuit. Several things occurred. And we found out these guys had no resources whatsoever from Amway. And so I had to figure out what to do, how to turn things around, because you signed a deal called joint and several. You probably know what that means. Back then, I didn't know that meant that I'm not on the hit for 1/4 of this. I'm on the hit for all of it if I have the most money, and I did. So I went through that process. But guess what? The way you become great in life and in business is by crossing the threshold of your comfort zones, right? I mean, think of it as there's a threshold of control. When you're young, your threshold of control is, I can handle anything within this circle of influence. But it's out here, it's kind of tough. But if you get enough challenges, hopefully you break through and you solve one of those problems, and now all these problems are solved. That's how you grow, right? So I had to solve a $50,000 problem one time to stay in business or go bankrupt. Now I got to solve a $125 million process. And it made me grow. That's how you get to multi-billions, because you learn how to deal with thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions. So it was one of the most valuable experiences of my life. I never made the mistake again. Joint and several mistake. And also, you can't bet on one of your partners. You got to know who all your partners are. So every experience I've ever had,
what changed though? So what different approach do you have to the game now when it comes down to that? So if you're going to do business with somebody, or you're going to hire somebody that's going to have access to all your information, they're going to be in your life, they're going to come to your house, they're going to be around your sage, they're going to be around everybody. What is the filtering process now that's different than before?
Private investigator on every single person that I go do business with, if I want to do a partnership with, on every aspect of their life, and I offer them to do the same with me. So it's clear who we are and who we're dealing with. That's number one. So I can
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. I got multi-billion dollar
And you tell me,
enterprise.
so let's just say we're doing a business. Hey, Pat, before we do anything, I got to hire a PI on you. You can do the same on me.
Yes. You got nothing to hide, do you?
I love that. I love that. And by the way,
by the way, whatever the PI brings back, I bring it to you and say,
I love that.
I bring it to you and say, this may be bullshit. This is what they found.
Sick.
Tell me what you think. So that has saved me so much.
So, first time I raised $10 million, the guy that got the $10 million it was Gabriel Brenner, who was the first Mexican-born professional sports owner in America, billionaire family. Mexico, here he owned the Houston Dynamo. He just recently sold Walt Disney's house. He owned for $74 million. Money guy. I brought De La Hoya came in, and Greg Scheer from, he's with Oak Tree Capital. He's done very well for himself. They came in, and they said, Pat, we're going to do a background check on you before we give you $10 million. I said, no problem. So they go do the background check, and a guy comes back. He says, well, we kind of find out everything about you. Are you comfortable we share with you? I said, yeah, go for it. He says, nothing happened that we're not going to give you the $10 million. But he says, did you know your license was suspended twice? I said, yeah, of course I knew that. He says, you have 16 speeding? Who the hell has 16 speeding tickets?
But it tells a little about your personality, too,
I love
right?
this PI.
But the same thing that they did with you is what I do. Is like, I bring it to you. I don't judge you. I say, look, this is what they found. If there's anything that's BS here, or you want to, let's talk about it. So I don't resolve it. I don't let the PI decide.
What do you do with executives? So let's just say you said 12 companies you operate, right? $8 billion, all the companies, but you said 8 to 12 that you personally operate, that you control, right?
Yes.
If you hire a COO, CFO, a executive assistant, somebody that's going to be directly chief of staff for you directly, what are you doing with them? Are you also doing a PI on them? And you tell them at the interview?
We tell them beforehand, are you open for it? Because it's what we like to do. If there's something you want to tell us now. And if something comes up, we're happy to chat with you about it.
What's the cost on every one of these? Is it a $10,000 PI, $20,000 spent?
It depends on the depth that you're going to go, right?
Okay.
So it depends on the person.
But some of them you'll spend $50,000, $100,000 to find out about.
It'll save you millions of dollars.
100%.
It'll save you, more importantly, it'll save you years. You can get back the money, you can get back the time,
I am all
right?
with it. I am all with it. That was fantastic to see that part.
And as long as you're willing to do it too, like you can do it on me too,
problem.
right?
Go for it. No problem. Go do everything you want to do with that. I don't have a problem with that. That was very helpful. Let's go to the next one. I got this question for you. So, Tony Robbins. We have this kid, Luigi Mangione, okay? Current event.
Yes.
He comes out and he kills the CEO of United Healthcare, right? Yes. Brian Thompson. And I wonder for someone like you how you process this. And I'm looking at my phone because I'm trying to find out one post. So you find a profile of this guy. They report, came from a wealthy family. Grandfather was a decamillionaire, 37 grandkids. They've all done well, attended a $40,000 a year private school, earned a bachelor's degree in computer science, 26, no criminal record, no behavioral flags, nothing. Clean slate, sharp dress, photogenic, vacations abroad, posts polished photos, looks like he's thriving, lands internships, builds a resume that screams success, spends the free time exploring AI, mushrooms, self-optimization trends, joins the professional world, follows a script. No sign of instability, just another rising star in tech, disappears from friends for 3 months. 3 months later, he kills United Healthcare CEO. Say the feds call you and they bring you in. They want to say, hey, can you tell us something? Here's everything here. What is Tony looking for patterns to prevent from the next guy from being a Luigi? And hey, if we could have done this, we could have prevented this from happening. He could have still been here with his kids. We're not talking about their 32% denial rate. I'm not even talking about how they don't, when it comes down to cases. What was the percentage? I think it's 32%, right, Rob, on what United Healthcare does. So we're not talking about that issue. What do you look for to prevent Luigi from doing what he did?
The story you told is not a complete story.
Okay.
What's missing is the time which they've been looking for him. His mother's not spoken to him in almost a year and a half. They've been trying to find him. The injury that he had. Also, what he was like in college, what actually happened after he went to prep school to college, where he became radicalized. It's very obvious, right? He hated capitalism. He was able to hate capitalism, think about this, because he never went through the process of having to earn. Everything was given to him. So he had everything he could ever dream of. So capitalism looks ugly to someone who's never trying to do it. There's these levels of spiritual development that you may be familiar with that Dr. Graves created back in the 60s when it looked like the world was coming apart. He actually saw a pattern in humanity as a whole. And he saw a pattern in our evolution of our spiritual development, not religious development, but spiritual development. And he saw it as an evolution of caring. Like, we all start out caring about ourselves. You say, as a baby, loving as long as you give them what they want. Otherwise, they scream, right? So there's these stages, and they develop colors. I learned this from Nelson Mandela. It was one of the things they used to turn South Africa around, so they wouldn't look at somebody and go, they're a white person. No, are they red? Are they blue? Are they at these color combinations? Because there were technical words for them. But I'll just give you an example. Survival is beige. It's like your stimulus response. That's not most humans, right? The first stage of development is purple. Purple is tribal. Tribal is like you look for protection from the tribe. There's many gods and they're very intense, and you got to make sure you honor them. Think of what a tribal environment is. But there are tribal environments in sports where guys wear the same socks or jockstrap when they're on a run to keep it ongoing.
For
Right?
sure.
They're thinking that there's this thing I've got to do to be able to keep this magic, right? The next level is we evolve as we exhaust a level. So above purple is now red, where you're like, I don't want to just be in a position where other people tell me what to do. I'm the god, I'm the king, I'm going to make it happen. That's the warlord. That's the rock star that tears up the hotel because he can, and people come pay everybody off, right? That's a 2-year-old, the terrible twos, where it's like, no, I'm in charge. This is how it's going to be. We all develop these stages. Past red, why do we leave red? Well, the warrior eventually finds there might be a bigger warrior, a more intense warrior. They're getting older. And how can I have significance in my life, the thing I want? Well, I need to have significance in the ever after. So we go to blue. Blue is right, wrong, good, bad, religious, or the army. The rules are very clear. You do this and this and this, you get a gold star. This and this, you go to heaven. You do this, you go to hell. It's very black and white. And people that live in that consciousness make all decisions like this, and you'll begin to recognize these. People evolve out of blue eventually because they're like, I'm tired of someone else telling me how it is. I don't know the Pope is the one who's going to tell me. I want to test it. You move to orange. That's science. That's business. That's where you say, I'm going to test it and figure out what's right. Orange people say, you know what? It's not a hierarchy, someone else telling me. I'm going to test and find what really works. That's science and business. That's most of middle, business America. There's green. Green is somebody that now says, no, the most important thing is not hierarchy. Like orange, you get hierarchy by performance. That would be like your businesses. Green is, no, we're a circle. It's egalitarian. Everything's equal. We make the decision the same.
Socialism.
We're all together.
Yeah.
Well, it's socialism at its extreme, but it can just be people that are socially conscious, right? Who care, but they're loving. Each level of consciousness eventually bumps into its limits. Then there's yellow, where yellow is, I can use all these levels depending upon what I need.
Is one above the other? Because I'm looking at it right now, Tony.
Yes.
The green, orange, it says capitalism, right?
Yes.
Achievement.
Or science. That's correct.
Or science, right.
That's
And then 6 is ecology.
That's right.
It's
being equal,
fair, everything
elegant.
equal, civil,
That's
right.
right.
And then
then
yellow, go ahead.
Yellow is where you're an integrator, where you think, because if I ask you which one of these is most important, green people say green's most important. Orange people say green people can't get anything done because they try to make a decision with a circle. We're most important. Blue people say, we know the rules. You guys are violating God. So when you understand these distinctions, and I'm doing very fast right now.
Where's the goal to be, though? Where do you want to be?
Your goal should be able to integrate them all. There's an ultimate level above that, which they call turquoise, which is where you feel everything, every creature, every human. Think of it this way. We evolved from focusing on ourselves to eventually we're ethnocentric. We care about our circle. On the block, you can't just get what you want. Now you got to please the other kids to get along, right? Or other Christians or other Jews or other Muslims or whatever it is. Then we evolved to no, everyone's our customer and we're going to please everybody, orange. And we evolved to green as we're all equal, right? We're all the same. When someone is at this yellow stage, they go, well, each of these have their place. Sometimes blue is the right thing. If we're in a fire and I'm in a room of 20,000 people, I'm probably going to go red to get people the hell out of the building. If I'm going to go be with a friend, I'm going to be green. I'm not going to be orange negotiating. You do this, I'll do that. That's not a friendship. So being able to flex these helps you. And you also understand why people get in conflicts then. Because you got somebody whose whole consciousness is we're all going to be the same, and someone else is like, without hierarchy, there's no biology. Like, what's more important, the atom or the cell? Which one?
Atom or the cell?
Yeah, which one's more important?
Which one is more important, atom or the cell? The cell?
The cell or the organ?
The organ.
The organ or the individual?
I'm assuming at this point the individual.
The individual or the community?
Well, now the community.
The community or the planet?
Well, yes, but I'm trying to see where you're going now.
The truth is, you're using your evaluations of them, but the truth is if you take any chain out of the middle of this, it all doesn't exist. It's all dependent upon each other.
How different is this than power versus force? You know the power versus
Yes,
force. Is it similar to that, or
it's a little different? It's a little different.
That's a little different.
Yeah.
So,
but here's where this is useful. If I'm talking with you and you keep going, this is right or wrong. I was just doing this seminar the other day, and this person's like, this is right, that's wrong, this is how it is, and there's all this tension. I can see they're in blue. If they've ever been to a higher level, maybe I can get them there. But I'm not going to get them there by saying, kumbaya, let's all be green. They're not going to respond to it. They know what's right and what's wrong.
That's a good point.
When you know where people are, that's when you're able to start. Listen, what makes you a leader? The ability to influence the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, the actions of another person, ideally with integrity if you're going to be a positive leader, right? You can only do that if you understand to influence somebody, you got to know what already influences them. And so I'm studying all the things that influence them, what they value, what they need, what their fears are, what their strengths are, so that I can help them continue to grow in what they want for their life, not what I think they should have for their life.
You know, it's so interesting you're saying this, because to me, going back to Luigi Mangione, right? If you go back to that chart of power versus force, to me, this was life-changing the first time I read this, because when I looked at this, I thought about people in my life, right? Shame at the lowest level, guilt, apathy, grief. You're like, oh my God, these are all bad qualities for you. And you're living in the face of force and fear, desire, anger. By the way, you probably, I think you recommended this, or Oprah talked about this on her show, but I don't know who it was. But anyways, I got my hands on this.
It's a great book. But what I want to tell you with him, for example, is so think about this.
How do you prevent the future, the next one?
But here's what I want you to understand. He grew up in an orange environment.
Can you go back to that?
Orange is, father was achievement, grandfather sent to millionaire, sent to, he didn't have to earn it.
Achievement, yeah.
He didn't have to do any of it. He never went through the stages of blue and orange. He got to go straight to green, which is everything's equal. This is unfair.
That's right.
And by the way, green, when it's not, imagine this. You can go to purple and feel everything.
Right.
But you won't stay there unless you have a foundation. It's a momentary state.
I got it.
So here's where he is. He never built the orange. He took it for granted. So he goes to green. And by the way, he never really got over his red.
But there's a lot of those guys right now, Tony.
Well, think of it this way. If you thought about Vietnam, there were a lot of people that were saying, I'm not going overseas. Right. But the ones that shot people, burned down buildings, they were red pretending they were green. Because green is socially acceptable. This kid, there are a lot of people in green that are celebrating this kid killing people.
That's right.
They're red. Their psychology is red. They're pretending they're egalitarian, but they really are, I want what I want the way I want it.
Wow.
But it's socially acceptable. It's the same way that people do virtue signaling.
And red is the warlord? Is that what it is? The gang culture?
Or a 2-year-old, same thing.
That's
or a rock star, right? Somebody that's like, it's my way or the highway. I get what I want, whether it serves you or not. So those red people say, oh, the company turned down. Yeah, the company may have done some terrible things. I don't know the absolute numbers. I don't know all the details. I don't think anybody really does. But then you address that in a different way. That's what a court system's for. That's what legislation's for. That's what options are for of those natures. But this person actually just cold-blooded murder guy who has children and kids, and he's being celebrated by people. And by the way, the guy that actually was trying to save people's lives on the subway was treated like he was a criminal. That's how crazy our society's become. But I think it's balancing out. It sure feels like it.
Okay, so a couple other questions, and I'm curious to know what you're going to say about these here. So you are around a lot of different people, and you have been mentored and advised a lot of different people, right? And, they'll come in, hey, I went to the Tony event, story. I think it was Kim Kardashian. I don't know what year it was that they were going through something. I think she had been robbed and something happened to Kanye, and they came to you. And,
it was brutal. They tied her up.
Invite you to bring you over. That's right. Yeah. This whole story. And so for someone like you, Tony, that you have the relationship with somebody you're helping, okay? And then say later on somebody you're close to, like, you and I, I read somewhere that you like Diddy's music, right? I listen to Diddy's music, some of the song about Biggie and all this other stuff. We're getting in a point that you're meeting people that come to, I'll never forget, Mike Tyson came in and Mike said, one day I'm taking a picture with a guy and I'm doing pictures with 200 people. And he says, next day, FBI comes up to me. I don't know if you've heard this story or not. They come up and they're like, hey, how do you know this guy? He says, I don't know this guy. He said, well, that guy just killed 8 people, And he took a picture with you. He says, dude, I take pictures with everybody. I can't take responsibility for this.
Yeah.
This story right here. Mike Tyson once unknowingly allowed serial killer into his gym before he was handed death sentence, and he put his arm around him, right? Took a picture with him. How do you, Tony, at this point, and you, obviously, you've been big for a few decades, so you've probably made these adjustments earlier on. But for somebody that's going through it, what feedback do you give as you're going through it where, hey, I helped this client out, we went through this. How do you manage that relationship when they end up making bigger mistakes in their lives later on? How do you manage that relationship with them then? Life-changing mistake.
Yeah, well, it depends on whether or not they're wanting help at that stage. And Mike is an example. I was called in with Mike when he bit off Oliver's ear,
right.
And they brought me in to make sure he didn't do it again. And Mike was a fan of my work, but thought I was here to help his wife at the time, right? So I tease him about it. So I've been put in really interesting situations throughout my life where they're there. But the answer to the question is, people have a nature. And if the best you can is help them to maximize their nature. Diddy brought me in at one point years ago. Just was one night. I went down, saw him. It was one of his big parties, one that was about to start. And he was telling me all the things that he was frustrated with. Because you remember, this guy has been driven. We have different needs. It's another typology. We need certainty. We need uncertainty, variety, or we don't feel alive. Too much certainty, you're bored. Too much uncertainty, you freak out. We need to feel significant, like we matter, like we're important to somebody. We need to feel the feelings of love and connection. We need to grow. We need to contribute. These 6 needs. But we're not all equal. Some people value certainty the most, and they live a very different life than somebody who wants variety. They're going to jump out of a plane. This person's never going to jump out of a plane, right? The most valued, the top 2 in our culture today are significance and certainty because of social media. Trying to be significant, even if you're not. Change your pictures, change your story. That's why young girls get on there and they have this comparison to something that's completely false, and they get depressed because it's not real. Well, Diddy, when you're driven by, everyone needs significance, but when it's at the top of your list, you either have to lie to yourself or have to push yourself at unbelievably intense levels because you're always comparing. If love is your driving force, you're always connecting. If certainty is driving force, you're trying to keep things the same, which of course life isn't the same. That's the number 2.
So significance as a one is a problem.
Significance because of social media has become the number 1 drive, not only in men, it usually is for men because testosterone drives that, but also for women as well. And then we want certainty. Well, the only thing that's certain is change, right? That's how it works. So most people are really unhappy today because they either have to lie to themselves or they have to admit and keep around themselves people they feel more significant than those people so they can feel important. Well, Diddy created all these businesses. He's an unbelievably talented musician and very good businessman. He created all this stuff, but he wanted to be the most significant. And his businesses were starting to get down, and he had so many businesses. So I came in and tried to show him that you're going to, regardless of your business, you're going to be miserable as long as this is overvalued. Of course you want to be significant. You are significant. But demanding significance is different than becoming significant because you've contributed massively to a human being or because someone feels your love. When someone feels completely loved by you and respected by you, you tend to become significant in their life in some way, right? So it's like he wants to hit this target. He really wants to be loved. But like a lot of very famous people, this is the number 1 thing I hear in famous people. I won the Academy Award, I did this, all this stuff, and now they're so unhappy behind closed doors. And the conversations we have is they really wanted love, but they thought if I'm significant enough, I'll be loved. But now everybody wants something from you. I'm sure you experience this, I do as well, but I expect it. It's not a big deal. I love giving people what they want as much as I possibly can. If someone wants a picture, someone wants a conversation, I'm happy to do it, right? But when you're with your family, these people would say to me, I'm with my family, the people interrupt our dinner and they come up and they just want what they want. They don't care. They don't even know who I am. Well, they thought by being significant, they get love, but by significant, they're just getting more demands and requests, and it makes them miserable. That's where he was at that stage. And I said to him, this is the things you'd have to make a change to do. I said, but I don't work with somebody that's not committed, so this is what it requires. And he didn't do the things he said he would do. So I didn't take him on as a client. Now, if I took him on a client and then I found this out afterwards, the truth is I probably would have found out because it wasn't a hidden situation for anybody that was around him. So to answer your question is, it depends on where they are and what they need. I'm there to try to help wherever I am. I'm not there to try and take responsibility for everything the person will ever do in their life.
For sure. No, for sure.
But the media might try to do that, but that's the media.
No,
that's what they're
going to do. Listen,
like they did that to Mike. I mean, it's absurd.
I totally get that. And then in regards to Kanye and Kim, how different was that?
Well,
because that's
very
different, right? That's a business.
Yes, very, very different. One was personal and the other was business. But Kanye, Kanye is a very unique human being, to say the least. And the two of them have similar needs to be, to be the best at what they are.
Kanye and Diddy or Kanye and Kim?
Yes, I understand.
Okay.
But I'm just saying they have similar need structures,
right?
But they have different ways of meeting them. So you can become significant, think about this, by working harder than anybody else and building the tallest building in town. Right. Or you can blow up everybody else's building. It doesn't take a lot of intelligence, and now you have the tallest building. You're the significant one. Sure. You can tear other people down.
Right.
Everyone meets their needs in different ways. So Osama bin Laden and the policemen and firemen that gave up their lives, many of them on 9/11, they ran in the building knowing they could die. Mm-hmm. Why would they do that? Because their life was about service, contribution, and significance. But their rule to be significant was to be a hero. I'd be willing to sacrifice my life for a stranger to save a life. You look at a man that was one of 25 children? I'm making the number up. I think it was 20 children that Osama bin Laden was one of 20 children. To get his father's attention was very, very difficult. He became significant overnight when he took his father's wealth, and he didn't do any battles. He brought that to Afghanistan, and boom, he went up. He developed the way to be significant as, I don't need to take risks. I send other people to kill themselves. And guess what? If others kill themselves and it does damage, then I'm a significant man. You can meet your needs in positive ways or negative ways. So two things shape us. We all want the same needs. The difference is, what are your top two? If your top thing is certainty, you're moving this direction. If your top is variety or adventure, you move in this direction. If you want significance, you're moving one direction. If you want love, you're moving another. And sometimes we have conflicts in these areas. But also, how do you get it? Do you get certainty by eating? Do you get certainty by doing drugs? Do you get certainty by working out hard? And you feel great afterwards and you feel in control of your life? Do you get certainty by taking charge? You can meet your needs in positive ways, negative ways, or neutral ways. What I get people to see is change is never about willpower long term. I got a lot of willpower. I know you do too. You wouldn't have done what you've done. But willpower is not enough. When you align your needs with something, where you start saying, by doing this, it makes me feel certain and I got variety, I'm growing. Like, think about your businesses. How many of your needs are met? How certain are you'll find a way to succeed no matter what?
Very high.
0 to 10, what would you say?
10.
Me too. How much variety is there in all your businesses, all the different challenges?
A lot.
0 to 10.
10.
That's right. How significant do you feel like what I'm doing is unique and special and I get to contribute in a meaningful way?
10.
How much connection and love do you have to your team? I already saw it when I came here. To the people you work with, to the mission you have. How much connection do you feel?
10. I love working
10.
with these guys.
How much does your business make you grow?
10.
And how much do you feel a sense of contribution?
10.
So you can go 50 hours a day in a 24-hour day, if there was such a thing, and you will work incredibly hard because all your needs are met. It's not work, you're fulfilled. Now tell me something you hate to do or you want someone else to do, you hire other people to do because you just don't want to do it.
Compliance, legal. I'm in insurance space, so you're gonna have to go through that. So those are things I'll hire. Some of the stuff that has to do with operations, HR, okay, I'll hire that out.
So let's take one of those. Doing fundamental HR, certainty that you're going to enjoy it and you're going to do well. Personally, if you did it.
4.
Variety in HR.
4.
Significance of HR.
5.
Sense of connection and love from HR.
4.
Growth from being in HR.
4.
Contribution in HR.
6.
Okay. So you got almost everything sub 5, sub 6, you got 1, sure. Right? You're not going to have any drive to do that.
No.
But I can take somebody, for example, who loves the clean house and you hate to do it, and I can find out how they do it.
Absolutely.
Because they're certain because they've done it so much. They get variety because every time they do it, it's a new mess, it's a new person. They grow because they're listening to audio programs while they're doing it, audio tapes. The people that find a way to do something they love, they found a way to meet all, or not always all, at least 3 to 4 of these needs. If they meet all of them, it's effortless. That's the same thing in a relationship. If you meet 2 needs in a one need in a relationship, you know the person. 2 needs, they become a friend. 3 needs, deep friendship. All 6 needs, you got a love slave. Because I've never seen anybody in a relationship, I've dealt with hundreds of thousands of couples over the years, and you'll always hear the same thing. I gave him everything except what they needed, or they'd still be there because it takes 2 sides, right? And so I dig in, and what you really find out, I've never heard anybody say, man, in this relationship, I feel so certain with her or him that they love me. We have so much surprise and variety. I feel like the most important person in the world. We're so in love and connected, and we're growing and we're contributing. I'm out of here. It doesn't happen that way, right?
Yeah.
So when you understand needs, when something meets at least 3 of these needs, a belief, an emotion, a behavior, you become addicted to it. Whether it's a positive thing or a negative doesn't matter.
Okay, so let's go. So I like how we're going here. Let's go to the next one. I want to see how you're going to solve this next problem. Okay, you ready? You're always at the...
I don't know if I can solve every problem.
No, but I like
I'm
the
just
way...
trying to give you insights.
No, I totally get
it. So I want you to know for that young man,
Yeah.
just going back to him for a second, he never built the infrastructure to be orange.
He or his family?
No, his family built it. He was the beneficiary of it.
So what could the family have done differently? Did they spoil him too early?
Yes, he was very...
Okay.
There's zero question that he did not earn all the way through that.
Did you ever read the book Ultimate Gift, Jim Stovall?
No, not that one, no.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. But the point is, so he went straight to green, and then he's really red because he's undeveloped. And then he probably got both in school, and then the problem in his back aggravated it all. And then he wanted... Listen to this. He's not a significant person now. His back hurts. He can't operate. He can't do the martial arts. He can't do these things. There's someone to blame. And then he fixated, and people get fixated.
How much did that blame his educational system?
Pardon me?
How much did that blame his educational system?
I'm not here to blame anything, but we both know that in the current educational system, at least Ivy League schools, there's this whole mindset of trigger warnings, this whole mindset of if someone doesn't agree with you, this whole idea of what is moral and what is not. I mean, I don't know what happened to sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Like words are now violence. If you ask Chris Rock, you say, if you think words are violence, no one has slapped the shit out of you on national television, right? It's like words are not violence. I mean, but so now you hear some people like AOC saying, well, they think denial is a form of violence. No, violence is violence. That is horrible and it's terrible.
How did we get to this point where these basic
because
comments...
they've been trained to believe this, and they haven't had enough life experience yet, so they expect life to be the way they've been trained, and life is not that way, as you and I both know.
And I know you don't like to put blame. Maybe let's change the word to responsibility. Does the responsibility lies on our educational system, society, parents? Who's the first domino to this?
Well, I think as parents, but I think most parents are so overwhelmed and they don't even know what to do. They're barely keeping their head above water.
Yeah.
So to try to figure out what's going on with their kid, they don't know how. That's the sad part. So now we've given the government the ability to educate our kids, and we can see what kind of job they've done. It's horrific. You go to Chicago or places like that, and you've got 70% of the people that can't read and write at even a junior high school level. And so we're not preparing people anymore for this process. So the system has to change. And then we have universities now where it's supposed to be a place where you go and explore all kinds of thoughts, but most of the professors, as you know, in most of these universities are extremely liberal. I'm not saying you shouldn't be liberal, but we need all points of view. I'm an independent personally. I voted on both sides of the aisle. Most of my life, I work with people on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, your customers are everywhere.
But I think you got to be able to have both sides that you understand so you can pick what makes sense to you.
Did you ever do anything with Betsy DeVos or no on the education side?
No, not with Betsy, no.
Okay, got it. So if the Trump administration reached out and doing something on the education side with schooling, would you participate?
Oh, of course. Okay. And I've already reached out on the mental health side and a couple of things.
I bet, because I know you got a relationship with Bobby and
yes.
and I think he's phenomenal at what he does. And I'm sure as an independent yourself, you're probably interested to see what directions he's going to take. The part with Bobby, since we're here. So I remember interviewing, it's an event in 2019. I have Kobe Bryant, the late Kobe Bryant at this event. I have President Bush at this event. We're at the Mirage. Billy Beane is there from Moneyball. I don't know if you've seen the movie Moneyball.
Yes,
I love Billy. I brought him 3 times. And I had Jordan Peterson there. I'm interviewing Jordan Peterson. And while I'm sitting there going through it, I'm like, dude, this guy's going through something. He's in pain. Something's bothering him. He just looked different. Right after the interview was done, he disappeared. This is when he went to Russia. I don't know if you were following the story or not. He openly talked about it himself, Michaela, his daughter. And then he talked about the fact that, there's certain medication, lorazepam, whatever it was, that, he went through. He's not alone. A lot of people have gone through that, right? This direction where we're at, my oldest son, when we were in Dallas, his teacher says, I need you to go have your kids see this therapist because I think your son has something. I'm like, what? Yeah. Okay. I actually want to do it to see what you want my son to do. So to me, it became a project. Let's go through it. My son, my oldest son's just like me. He's, curious, different, can't stop talking, reading. He's always like all over the place. So I take him to the doctor. And he goes, you know what? ADHD, you may want to consider taking this medication. We can do this. We can do that. I'm like, yeah, that's where it stops, guys. We're good. We got to go home. Thank you so much. He's okay.
Yeah.
This kid's going to be okay.
Yeah.
But for a guy like me, I'm in the space, I'm around a lot of people, I'm talking to guys who are, using their resources where you can borrow and you're reading. To the average person with this direction we're going, hey, you got a problem? Take this pill. Take this, bipolar pill. Take this, whatever this pill is, Prozac. Take this, Zoloft, all this stuff. I have an insurance company. A lot of guys are on a lot of stuff. I have no idea this many medication people are taking, right? How do we get there? And two, what's the solution for it long term?
Well, I think we got there by trying to get efficient with the process of managing human beings that aren't managing through their life. We went to therapists originally, and then psychiatrists, not psychologists, became driven by basically the pharma business. I mean, it's pretty obvious what's there now. So, for example, on the cover of Newsweek 2 years ago, there's an article. And the cover, I actually brought it here just in case you hadn't seen it. See, I think I have it in here anyway. I threw it in here. But the cover of it talks about how SSRIs, which is the drugs that we use for depression, they don't work. Oh, maybe I left it on the helicopter. It says on the cover, 42 million Americans doing it, and meta studies now show that a sugar pill is just as effective as SSRIs, and they don't have the downsides.
Is this one?
Yep, you
Hooked
got it
on
right there.
Hype.
Hooked on Hype.
Yeah.
There you go. What does it say there? Antidepressants work no better than sugar pills for most of the 43 million Americans who take them. We know that as a fact now. It's 2 years later, and we're still giving this mass number of human beings on this earth these drugs that don't change anything. They just basically make them so they're numb. So remember I talked to you about those 3 decisions, what you focus on? Let's do something with your audience that's practical for them right now, because we're talking these highfalutin ideas. Let's do something pragmatic. So we don't experience life. We experience life we focus on. Meaning what's wrong is always available, so is what's right. Whatever you focus on, you feel, even if it's not true. If you imagine something horrible is going to happen, you feel it. You're in your body, right? So focus equals feeling. Focus equals reality to the individual, even though it's not reality in actuality. We decide, every moment we're deciding what to focus on, but most of us don't decide consciously. It's based on habit. So we're not in control. But we can consciously choose what to focus on. When we decide what to focus on, our brain has to come up with a meaning, like we said, the end or the beginning. Loving me or dissing me, whatever the case may be. And that affects your emotions, which decides the third decision, what am I going to do? But let's start with focus. Let's take 3 patterns of focus for your audience. If I asked you, and I think I know with you, it would be pretty simple, but which of these do you tend to spend more time in? Do you tend to focus more on what you have or what's missing?
What's missing?
That's right. And when I ask most audiences that I have 20,000 people in the stadium, the majority of them are achievers, and the majority of them focus on what's missing. Now, since during COVID, almost everybody was focused on what's missing because many things were taken from them. So now I want you to think about this. If you constantly focus on what's missing, it'll make you keep pushing, but it's very hard to sustain deep levels of happiness because you're all focused on what's missing. And so you're an overachiever, so you can still stack those enough to still feel good. But for most people, they go, it's missing. I'm missing the love of my life. I'm missing this. I'm missing that. That puts them in a state of frustration, anger, sadness, or ultimately depression. Now let's take a second one. Do you tend to focus more? I'm sure I know what the answer on this one is. More on what you can or can't control. All of us focus on both things, right? But which one do you focus more on, can or can't control?
For the average person, I get what you're saying. For me, at this phase of my life, if I was 35, when I was 2013 and 2014, Tony, I will tell you, anxiety and panic was at the highest level. We had our second kid. I'm in church. I'm going out because I can't control my chest. My palms are sweating. And I'm constantly worried. One day I'm coming back from a tour. 2 of my guys are going through a mess in the company. I'm about to lose the whole thing. This has got to be 2013. And one night I go to ER. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. My dad comes. He says, I think my son's having a heart attack. I go to ER. And I'm like, look, what the hell is going on in my body? He says, dude, your body is exhausted. You haven't drank any water. What have you been doing? I've been on a 30-day tour. Well, listen, you haven't gotten sleep. I was at 2-3 hours because we're going city, and trying to grow the business. But the anxiety was of, man, I can't control this, all this other stuff. And then I went through the phase of finding it for myself. But to the average person, we focus on what we don't have. To the average person, we focus on what I have no control over.
That's right.
President, what am I going to do? Election, taxes, oh my God, drones, what's going on over here? For sure. I agree.
And you know what that produces? Anxiety, fear, frustration, high stress, anger, right?
Yep.
Third question, and by the way, most people in my events tend to focus on what they can control 100%. That's why they come.
Right.
They come because they want to take control. They want more skills.
No
They're
question.
hungry to driven, right? But the average person or I can't control. And that's why so many people, we have so much mental health problems because kids now think the whole world's going to end in 12 years because the ecology is going to fall apart, which is a total lie.
Right.
We all know it's a lie. But when you believe that, I don't even want to have a kid. I can't do anything. Total anxiety. So now how do you treat that? Well, I'll give you one more. Do you tend to focus on the past, the present, or the future? We all do all three. Where do you spend more time?
For me,
yes.
Okay, I'd like to be present, but I will tell you, I'm a future guy.
I know.
Yeah.
So, and that makes you successful because you can anticipate. Most achievers focus on the future. The happiest people focus on the present.
I agree.
Right?
I totally agree.
So the key is flexibility.
Right.
If you focus on the past, you can't change it. So that's, unless you're focused on something wonderful, which most people don't, that's not where you want to spend your time. So watch this. I'll ask a room of 20,000 people, stadium, and I'll say, okay, how many of you in this room, we've gone through these three, how many know somebody that takes antidepressants and they're still depressed? 90% of the room raises their hand. Do you know somebody who does that?
Many.
How's that possible? Because the drug does not change anything. All it does is numb you and has massive side effects, including suicidal thoughts. On the other hand, what is really going on? What's going on is they're constantly focused on what they can't control. They're constantly focused on what's missing. They tend to focus more on the past or a future that they think they can't control. And it puts them there. Until you change the cause, that doesn't go away. So watch this. During COVID, we had the most expansive mental health challenges ever. We had the most overdoses, the most abuse of alcohol and drugs that we've ever seen in the history of this country. People were trapped. They didn't know what to do. They had the worst thoughts. Everything seemed like it's going to be forever, and they're there. Stanford comes to me and says, we had two professors that came through your Date with Destiny program. Both were clinically depressed, and now they don't have any symptoms of depression. They're not taking any drugs. How is this possible? So I start to explain what we do, where people, they change their own values, rules. They change it so that it's easy to feel good, hard to feel bad, where they're in control instead of reacting to the environment, right? It's a 6-day immersion process that changes your conditioning. You do it. I don't tell you what to do. You do it. I show you how. And they go, well, do you have any data on the results of this? I said, well, yeah, I got hundreds of thousands of graduates and letters. And they said, no, like scientific data. I said, no, but if you want to do a study, let's do it. They said, we'd love to study depression. I said, great. I said, tell me what the base is. Like right now, current treatments, what's the average? Well, meta studies, you won't believe this. Meta studies, Patrick, show that 60% of the people that get treatment with drugs and or therapy, 60% make zero improvement for depression. 40% improve. The average improvement, according to meta studies, is 50%. So they're half as depressed as they were. They still feel terrible. Now, some people get well, but very few. Most stay on medication for years and years and years, and side effects of that. I said, that'd be easy to beat with a placebo, in my opinion. And he goes, yeah, maybe right. I said, I guarantee we'll build that. I say, I guarantee you'll do the measurement. And I said, but what's the best that's ever happened? What's the best result in the history of psychiatry? It was at Johns Hopkins 6 years ago. They took people and put them for 30 days on psilocybin, magic mushrooms, and cognitive therapy. I said, 30 days of mushrooms and therapy. I mean, you got to get a change out of that. They said, Tony, it's the most powerful change we've ever seen. 6 weeks after the month of this treatment, 54% of the people had no symptoms whatsoever, depression. There's nothing like it in the history of psychiatry. I said, our target is to beat that. I think we will, but that sounds probably like hyperbole when you hear it, but I think you'll see we're changing the cause, so it should be much better than that. Let's see. They set up the study. They mirrored the example of the opposite group like they did for the group in Johns Hopkins. We did 6 days, no drugs, no individual therapy. And at the end, they followed up with them 6 weeks later. 93% of the people had zero symptoms whatsoever of depression. The 7% were left made significant improvements, and 17% came in with suicidal ideation, and not one person had suicidal ideation at the end of 6 days. That's it. They followed up a year later. 71% decrease in negative emotions, 52% increase in positive emotions. Stanford's saying now they have 2 other studies they're doing now, a year-long study on engagement in business, because engagement equals EBITDA, as you know, right? So the changes that you can make are amazing. Now, how do we make those changes? They're like, how is this possible? They followed me for 3 years. They put this device on me, it's a $50,000 device that measures everything. They took my blood at every break. They took my saliva. They checked your hormonal balance. And here's what they found. They've done this with Tom Brady, our mutual friend. They've done it with some of the top teams that win over and over again, like the Lightning, the hockey team. And they measured something and found something interesting. The teams that win again and again are able to deal with stress in a unique way because Tom Brady's down by 10 points. It's the 4th quarter of the Super Bowl, and he comes back to win. And 2 minutes left. How does he do it? His testosterone surges to just gigantic levels. Now, testosterone gives you unbelievable focus and drive, and it makes you remember everything. If I said, where were you on 9/11? Everyone remembers where they were. 8/11, you don't remember anything. The difference is information without emotion is not maintained, but that level of intensity, you retain it. That's why a year later, people are still shifted. But secondly, usually when you get testosterone, you get a lot of cortisol. That's the stress hormone. For these people, their testosterone surges, the cortisol drops through the floor. So all they have is this centered, focused power that doesn't hold them back. Every time I get on stage, I go into that biochemical, they call it the championship biochemistry. But here's what's really interesting. Then they started measuring my audience. They did it live. And then when COVID happened, imagine this, my whole thing is doing events all over the earth, Australia, London, everywhere we go, stadiums full of people. And in March of 2020, the governor of California calls and says, guess what? Sorry, you can put 100 people in the stadium. I'm like, no. 14,000 people, no. All right, we're going to Vegas. They'll never shut down Vegas. A week before Vegas, they shut down Vegas. Wow. We're going to Texas. The governor says he's not going to bend. Texas is its own country. 2 weeks out of that, we moved 14,000 people shut down.
Wow.
We're going to do this in movie theaters. They'll let us put 10 people in a movie theater. We'll get 14 at the movie theaters, then go locally. They'll have a big screen, big speakers, all this stuff, and they shut down the movie theaters. So I was like, how am I going to help people? It's like, I'm going to have to do something I never thought would be possible. I'm going to do this in their homes. I'm used to a stadium, rock and roll. We go 12 hours and people wouldn't sit for a 3-hour movie and they're out of their mind. Well, people that got dragged, they're out of their mind. How do I do that in their house? How do I do that if we're starting here at 10 a.m.
Right.
and Palm Beach, and I'm projecting and I got 193 countries, which is how we do it now. And I got guys in Australia that it's already midnight and they're going to go from midnight to 1 in the afternoon for 4 days and nights. And we lose 2% of the people on average, to give you an idea. I didn't believe that was possible. But they measured the people overseas. I've created this way to do it, a studio. I can tell you the details anytime you want. But the bottom line is the engagement is so large, they sent people around the world and did their blood in real time, did their saliva, and they all, it looks like music. They start out and then they start mirroring me. You know, mirror neurons? They literally go into the same state of testosterone and the drop off of cortisol, and that's why it sticks. It's a change in the conditioning in their nervous system. It's not just thoughts they thought, and that's why it's retained a year later with continued impact. So we have a scientific process. I've always known what it is, but now science is duplicating it. Now here's what's interesting. That study was published last year in the Journal of Psychiatry, one of the top journals around. How many phone calls do you think I've gotten from anybody in that community?
How many?
0.
Not interested.
Not a single one.
There's no profit in it.
But now with Bobby, you know, and Bobby gets so misaligned, I'm sure you know. I mean, Bobby just wants to have free food that doesn't have chemicals that create cancer. He wants to make sure that if you're going to have a vaccine, that it's actually tested and safe. So, you know, I helped connect Bobby. I was one of the people that got him with Trump because I'm an independent. I knew he wasn't going to win. He actually wanted me to be his VP. We spent the first month before anybody else, and I didn't choose to go that route because I don't want to be on one side or the other. I've always been to help people on both sides. You have no
interest.
I had interest. We spent a month talking about it, but in the end, I felt like it would make me one side or the other. I want to serve everyone. So I don't want to be a politician.
In the future, you're not touching politics.
I doubt it.
Okay.
I won't shut out anything, no, because you might change your opinion about something. But right now, that doesn't feel like it. But I want to support people on both sides of the aisle, like I always have, the right people on both sides of the aisle. So I connected him because the other side wasn't open. So it's like, if this guy wins.
You spoke to the other side as well.
I didn't speak to him. He went and spoke to him. He tried to. He went to them.
Well, you invited both of them, right? I think you did invite
Yes, I did invite both of them to use my facilities.
Right, to use a facility. I remember. You made a video about it, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
But the bottom line is, like, I'm not here to tell people who to vote for. I didn't say, here's who you should vote for. I brought both people.
It's never been your style.
It's just not, I'm not some celebrity telling you what to do. I'm here for you to do what's right. Vote. And for you to educate yourself. And I'll do anything I can so you understand both sides on your terms, not my terms, right? But I brought him together with Bobby because Trump really wanted to make a difference in this area. And he made it clear he did. And so now he is. And now you got Bhattacharya at NIH, and you got Dr. Martin McCary, who's at FDA. I mean, and Dr. Oz, who's my friend as well, who's going to run Medicare and Medicaid. You have all the guys that were being attacked who were telling the truth are now going to be in charge. So I think we're going to see a real shift.
How long have you known Trump? Do you and Trump go way back or no?
I've known him for about 25 years. He's not like my buddy. I didn't hang out with him or anything.
Has he been to an event or no?
Oh, yeah, and he's spoken to my events. I gave him his first big event. He came in in Philadelphia, I think it was in Philadelphia. He thought he was coming to speak to 400 people. And I thought it was a big group. And we had 12,000 people. And he couldn't believe it. It was the first big crowd he did. And I wrote about it in his book, actually. It was like the first time. Now that's like his basic fundamental thing to doing. He loves it the most. But I watched him. His big piece of advice there was get a prenup. That was the first piece of advice he gave when he got up in front of the
would say
room
something like that. Well, that's good. That's cool to hear. By the way, for me, if the average person's watching this, I do want the audience to know about Time to Rise. So if you don't mind, let's finish up with that. Please. But I do want to say something here to the audience. How many live events do you still do? Just out of curiosity. Are you still doing one a month, one every other month, or how many are you doing?
No, I do more than that. Yeah, but I do a lot of them more where I'm not having to travel as much because I have my daughter. So I do a lot of them that are digital events.
And you do Palm Beach Convention Center, right?
Yeah, I do Palm Beach Convention Center. And some people go now because now we're no longer in that environment. So they'll do it online, some people, and other people come.
How many live do you do?
Gosh, I have about 125 days a year versus maybe 150 versus it used to be.
Physically live, that you're there.
Yeah.
Okay. So listen, do me a favor. 2025 is around the corner. Just trust me when I'm telling you this. On your to-do list of things to do, if you've never seen this, it's a spectacle. I don't know how much longer he's going to do it. He's at a different phase of his life. Tony may all of a sudden 2026 say, I'm done. I'm not going to be doing events anymore. And he may, lower the amount of things because he's, kids, family, all the responsibility that he has. Whatever you're doing, schedule time for you and your wife. If you have an older son or daughter, take them with you to the event. It truly is something you'll never see. For the people, I never had a chance to watch Michael Jordan play. Never. I watched Kobe play many times. I never had a chance to go to a Michael Jackson concert. Michael Jackson, Prince. I never saw those performers. You have to go watch a live event on Tony. You just have to do that. Whatever he's going to say next, great. All I'm saying to you is if you get a chance to go watch a live event, it'll inspire you in ways you've never seen, and it'll also get you to think about what the human body is capable of doing. I think it's very important to witness that. But if you don't mind, I know we're getting to the end of it here. Time to Rise. What could you tell us about that event?
Well, as I said, when COVID happened, I had to figure out how to serve people.
Right.
And I thought, they're stuck at home. Let me eliminate every obstacle they have. It's travel, it's money, it's time. So I don't want to just do like an hour someplace, but I want to do something in their home. So I built this studio with 20-foot high ceilings, 25-foot high ceilings, and I built 20-foot high LED screens. And I did 0.67 highest resolution, built it all around, built this software so that people can use their phone instead of clapping. So if one person does it, you barely hear it, but when 25,000, it goes crazy. And then I said, I'm going to go do a free seminar for 3 days where I'm going to give them the tools right at the beginning of the year here in January to change their life. Because everybody in the beginning of the year, we have this artificial thing, new year, new life. It feels good. It's totally made up, but it's nice. It gives you momentum potentially. But what most people do is set some New Year's resolutions and they're broken by the 1st of February. So what we do is have people create a path. So it's about 2.5, 3 hours every day for 3 days. It's coming up on January 30th, 31st, and February 1st. So I've done 4 of them. This is my last one I'm doing. There's no charge for it whatsoever. It's not partially free. It's totally free. You can attend from any country in the world, and you can bring it. You can do it at home. You can do it at your office with your coworkers. You can do it at home with your family or friends. But at the end of 3 days, you're going to have a path for this year, and you're going to know what stopped you in the past. Like, what do you really want? What's gotten in the way? Has it been certain fears, and we're going to get rid of them? Has it been some limiting beliefs or stories? Is there a skill you're missing? Is there a habit that's getting in the way? And then you're going to put together your plan, and then we're going to help you create momentum. And then you're also part of a community. We started the first year with 300,000 people. The second was 800,000. Last year was 1.1 million people from 193 countries, every country in the world. Imagine it'd be 20 stadiums full of people for 3 days in a row that are going and changing their life. And then every night, there's no charge for it, but my charge is you got to do some homework here. So I know you're doing it. And then they put it on Facebook or they put it on the other pieces. And I go and watch them, the videos. I'm up all night long. It's one of the most beautiful things in the world, seeing people make these gigantic changes. A woman who was watching on a phone, she'd been kicked out of her house, sleeping in her car, and everybody's helped her out. And now she's got 2 different jobs. She's doing what she loves. A guy that just got out of prison couldn't see his daughter, because he was so intense before. Now he's back with his daughter. A guy that was having trouble in his business. Now he's grown his business to $50 million, was doing $3 million just 3 years ago, all from just this one event. So if you want to go, you go to timetorise.com and just get yourself registered and come and attend, and we'd love to be able to serve you. And I'm going to just this time for this year.
Kid Rob, can you put the link below as well? Can I give you a gift?
Yes, please.
Okay, Rob, is it where I think before you bring it in? So when we were walking in, you came in your helicopter. We walked into the building. And when we walked in, I want to say 8 years ago, I'm in an auction and I buy 3 statues that I've been wanting to have for a long time in my office, okay? And it wasn't easy to get because you have to get it from somebody that's on the inside. So even when I became a minority owner of the Yankees, one of the guys that's a Pittsburgh Steelers owner called me and said, hey, I noticed that you have this statue. Can I buy it from you? I said, dude, I don't want to sell it. I don't want to do any of that. We walked in here. You commented on the Batman that I had outside. Yes. I want to gift it to you, man. I just want to hand it over to you, and it's yours wherever you wanted to get it.
What a cool
We've
thing.
had it here for almost 8 years, and every
ridiculous.
office I've ran, it's been there.
I don't need. I mean, you're so kind to do that. It's beyond kind.
I know you don't need it. I know you can go by. No. But when you came in, the reaction I saw.
Because I have my underwater. I have.
Yeah. When you said that, I said, you know what? I love it. I love that it was very innocent, sincere. So this right here, it's an official one. I'm sure you're going to appreciate it having it.
Oh my God, that's
I thought it would be better you having it than me having it.
No, that is unbelievably generous. I have in my home, I actually got into playing, as I shared with you, playing sports. And one of them that I started playing was I was really playing racquetball, and I got into squash. And it's like, I have this big home, and they're like, you can't build a squash court here. And I said, yes, we can. We're going to go down. I said, you can't go down. The water's on this side, the intercoastal, and the ocean's on this side. It's below the water table. And I said, have you ever been to Atlantis? Have you ever been to Scripps? I said, we'll build it. They go, they'll never get approved. I said, the people here in this town are my fans. We'll get it approved. We thought it'd take 1.5 years, took 3 years. So we have 8,000 square feet underground of bowling alleys and basketball and all this stuff for my kids and grandkids. And I actually was going to an auction, and then I was in a seminar, so I couldn't complete it. And I had for an auction for one of the suits like this. So that's why I was admiring it. That is so crazy.
Well, it's yours now. Now you can add that over there. You coming out here, I really appreciate it. And like I said to you earlier, man, you're an inspiration to millions, including this guy. I appreciate the great work you've done in your dedication to people for making other people's lives better. I'm grateful for you, brother. I want you to know that.
I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful that you're out there. I'm grateful that you tell the truth. So very few people are willing to tell the truth. Everybody's trying to, position themselves. And one of the things I really respect about you is that, as well as, it's one thing to talk a good game, but you and I both have lived it. And when you produce results and you speak, there's a different conviction than something you read about or heard about. And so I really honor you, PBD.
Thank you.
Patrick, for all that you've done.
I appreciate it.
I really respect you, and I look forward to our friendship growing.
Fantastic. Likewise. Gang, go register for it and put it on your to-do list to go one of his live events in 2025. God bless everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Nowadays, more than ever, the brand you wear reflects and represents who you are. So for us, if you wear a Future Looks Bright hat or a Valuetainment gear, you're telling the world, I'm optimistic. I'm excited about what's going to be happening, but you're a free thinker. You question things. You like debate. And by the way, last year, 120,000 people got a piece of Future Looks Bright gear with Valuetainment. We have so many new things. The cufflinks are here. New Future Looks Bright. This is my favorite, the green one. Just yesterday, somebody placed an order for 100 of these. If you watch the PBD podcast, you got a bunch to choose from. White ones, black ones. If you smoke cigars and you come to our cigar lounge, we have this high quality lighter cutter and a holder for the cigars. We got sweaters with the Valuetainment logo on it. We got mugs. We got a bunch of different things. But if you believe the future looks bright, if you follow our content and what we represent with Valuetainment, with PBD Podcast, go to vtmerch.com. And by the way, if you order right now, there's going to be a special VT gift inside just for you. So again, go to vtmerch.com, place your order, tell the world that you believe the future looks bright.